Welcome back to Paranormal M channel. The weather's been pretty cloudy lately. How is it where you are? Drop a comment and let me know. I've been having a blast sitting here sharing paranormal stories from all over the world with you. And if you've ever had a paranormal experience yourself, don't hesitate to send it my way. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Now, switch on your nightlight and get ready for your favorite time of day. Thank you, as always, for listening. It means a lot and really keeps me going. So, this is a story I don't tell often. It still makes my skin crawl a little, but I've reached a point where I can talk about it without shaking. This was about 6 years ago, when I was in my mid-20s. I was a very tired mom with 2 little ones. My son, Milo, who was 3, and my daughter, Aria, who had just turned 2. Aria is autistic, and even back then, she had some really intense behaviors. Meltdowns, self-harming, ripping up anything she could get her hands on, refusing clothes, lining up toys for hours. On top of that, my body was quietly starting an autoimmune war I didn't know about yet. I just knew I was exhausted all the time, and everything hurt. I was also going through a divorce. My ex, Daniel, was still around a lot, because as much as we couldn't stand each other, I really needed the help with the kids. So he was in and out constantly. We argued almost every day. It was not a peaceful home. We were living in this cheap, big apartment just outside of Dallas, in a rough neighborhood. I'd always been a hardcore atheist, like aggressively logical, very everything has a scientific explanation, and if it doesn't, we just haven't found it yet. But the very first time I walked into that apartment, I got this feeling. You know when your stomach drops for no reason? It was like that. And it was coming from this tiny utility closet at the end of the hallway, where the water heater was. I opened the door, looked in, nothing. Just pipes, dust, and a water heater. Still, the air felt heavy, dark. I shrugged it off because, again, science. I told myself I was just being dramatic and we moved in. Months went by. Lots of stress, lots of yelling between Daniel and me, lots of sleepless nights with the kids. Nothing paranormal happened at first, just normal chaos. First incident. One night, after I finally got both kids to sleep, I went to take a shower. We had 2 bathrooms. One worked, one didn't really. I was in the working one, started my shower, and realized I'd left my shampoo in the other bathroom. Now, the way the apartment was laid out, there were 2 bedrooms, each with a door that connected through the hallway. And then there was this little Jack and Jill type setup between one bedroom and the second, non-working bathroom. There was also a door between the bedrooms that I never closed. Ever. I was super paranoid about the kids. I liked to be able to hear everything. So I had this hard rule with myself. Don't lock doors. Don't close anything that would keep me from hearing them. So I step out of the shower, grab a towel, and head to the other bathroom to grab the shampoo. To get there, I go to that door between the 2 bedrooms, the one that is always open. And it's locked, from the inside. I remember just standing there dripping, staring at the doorknob thinking, that has to be wrong. I don't lock this door. I literally never lock this door. The kids were both asleep in their rooms. The front door was dead-bolted, and Daniel wasn't there. It was just me. I checked the hallway entrance to the second bathroom, locked too. My heart started pounding. I grabbed one of Daniel's old bowling trophies from the dresser, like I was actually going to go bash in a door and fight some intruder naked in a towel. Not my smartest imagined plan, but I was terrified. I checked the whole apartment. Front door still locked from the inside. Windows latched. Kids sound asleep, untouched. Nothing out of place. Eventually I managed to unlock the door from my side. I honestly don't remember how. It's a blur. And when I opened it, the other bathroom was just normal. Dark. Quiet. Empty. No signs of anybody having been there. The scratching. Back in the shower, I'm finally trying to calm down, and suddenly, I feel something scratching the backs of my thighs. Like cartoon scratching. Rapid, light, but sharp. Like when a cat runs past you with its claws out, but there was nothing in there with me. I froze, and it kept going, up and down the backs of my legs. I jumped out of the shower, looked down, and there were red scratch marks on my skin. Not deep, but very clearly there. I grabbed my phone, took pictures from a million angles, and sent them to my friend Jess, with something like, "Okay, either my shower is haunted or I'm losing it." Jess replied, totally casual, "Maybe it's like poltergeist energy, built up negative vibes or whatever." I remember rolling my eyes, even though my heart was pounding. I typed back, "Sure, or maybe my shower tiles are secretly knives." But those scratches were real. After a few weeks, when nothing else happened, I kind of stuffed it down, decided it didn't matter. The matching scratches, then it escalated. One morning I woke up and had this long scratch going down my left forearm. It was just one line, but it went from my wrist almost to my elbow, like something had dragged a single claw all the way down. I checked the bed, the wall, the headboard. Nothing sharp. I didn't sleep with jewelry. There was no reason for it. Later that day, Daniel came over. We were on the tiny balcony, him leaning halfway inside the living room because the sliding door was cracked open, and the kids were playing behind us. He's smoking, we're talking, probably arguing about something stupid, and suddenly, he jerks his arm back and goes, "Ow, what the hell?" He holds out his forearm, and I swear to you, it has the same kind of scratch. Same arm, same direction, same weird, shallow but angry look. It was like mine had been photocopied onto his skin. I showed him my arm and was like, "Do you see this? Do you see how they match?" He shrugged it off, told me we probably brushed against something. "You're overthinking it," he said. "You're stressed." I tried to let it go. We went inside. I made dinner. We wrangled the kids to the table. At one point, my 2-year-old Aria pulled off her little t-shirt because she hated wearing clothes, as usual. And right down the center of her back was a single, long scratch. Same look, same feel. One clean line, top to bottom. My stomach dropped. I felt cold all over. It wasn't just me anymore. It wasn't just my imagination or my stress. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't want to scare her. But I looked at Daniel like, "Do you see this now?" And he still tried to brush it off. That night, I did not sleep. The handprint. A little while later, I was on the phone with my older sister, Lena. She's religious, very gentle about it, but she believes in angels and demons and all that. I, at the time, did not. I told her about the door, the scratches, how my nerves were shot. She was quiet for a bit, and then she said, "I really think something's in that apartment. You should pray." I rolled my eyes, even though she couldn't see me. "Lena, come on. There has to be some logical explanation." I was standing in the living room, near the big window that looked out over the parking lot. We had these long white curtains that touched the floor. The AC was off, no fans on, no drafts. It was one of those heavy, still nights. As I'm saying, there's probably a scientific reason. I see the curtain in front of me move. Not a ripple, not a breeze. A clear handprint, fingers and palm, pushes outward from the inside of the curtain. Like someone standing behind it pressed their hand against the fabric and slowly dragged it down. My sister is on the phone, going, "Hello? Hello? Are you still there?" And I'm just staring at this curtain that is now completely still, like nothing had happened. Finally, I whispered, "Lena, Something just pushed the curtain. She didn't even hesitate. You need to pray. Right now. Just say whatever comes to your mind and ask it to leave. Ask God to protect you and the kids. And listen, my little atheist self prayed harder in that moment than I ever had in my entire life. It wasn't pretty or poetic. It was more like, please, whoever, whatever, just make this stop. Don't touch my kids. Don't touch us. Just leave. I hung up and called Jess again. She came over with incense and a lighter and said, "Okay, we're cleansing this place." We walked through every room, burning incense, speaking out loud, saying things like, "You are not welcome here. This is our home. You have to leave." I felt ridiculous and terrified at the same time. But after that night, things got quiet. For about 2 months, nothing happened. The fork and the water. Eventually, I started to relax. I even let Daniel stop crashing on the couch every night. The kids would go stay with his mom sometimes, which gave me a little break. One day, he took both kids to his mom's house, and I had the apartment to myself for the first time in a long while. It was peaceful. Sun coming through the windows, TV off, just normal silence. I remember thinking, maybe whatever it was is gone. Maybe the incense and all that worked. Later that afternoon, Daniel called to say he was on his way back with the kids, about 10 minutes out. We talked briefly, hung up. I was standing by the half wall that separated the kitchen from the living room, the kind you can see over while you cook. On the counter next to me was a fork from lunch. As soon as I put my phone down, that fork shot straight up into the air. I'm talking almost to the ceiling, in this smooth, impossible arc, and then it clattered back down onto the counter. I just stared at it. I didn't even scream. My brain was like, no, nope, absolutely not. Then I grabbed my keys and ran out the front door. I called Daniel back, totally hysterical, trying to explain through tears, and he was doing his usual, "You're freaking yourself out, it's stress. Calm down, I'm almost there." So I sat on the stairs outside, waiting. When he got there, I was still shaking, still begging him, "Please, just listen to me. Something is wrong with that apartment." We went back inside together. He's rolling his eyes, trying to make jokes, and then we both hear this sound, this sharp, meaty pop, like when you smack your fist into your palm. He suddenly winces and grabs his forehead. "Ow, what the?" When he pulls his hand away, there's a red mark forming, like he'd just been smacked right in the middle of his forehead by an invisible hand. He looks at me, and for the first time, I see real fear in his face. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we hear water. Not a drip, a pouring sound. We walk around the corner toward the kitchen, and water is coming out from the bottom of a completely random wall. Not the sink, not the dishwasher, just the wall. Like the wall itself had sprung a leak. It was pooling onto the floor, spreading across the tiles. We just stared at it for a second, and then I said, "Nope, get the kids, we're leaving." We grabbed the kids, grabbed our bags, and ran out like the building was on fire. Drove around for about half an hour because neither of us wanted to go back. When we finally did go back, the floor where the water had been, bone dry. No dampness, no puddle, nothing. Leaving for good. We did it. We put salt across the thresholds, in the window tracks, in a line by that creepy utility closet. We spoke out loud again, telling whatever it was that it wasn't allowed there, that it had to go. And it did feel calmer. Nothing dramatic happened after that. But we couldn't relax in that place anymore. The kids were restless, I was on edge, and even Daniel, the king of "you're overreacting," didn't argue when I said, "We're breaking the lease." So we did. We broke the lease early, paid the fee, and got out. I went into that apartment as a smug atheist who thought ghosts and demons were just stories people told themselves when they couldn't explain things. I still don't know exactly what was in there. I don't know if it was a spirit, or some weird, concentrated bad energy, or something else entirely. But I know this. Doors I never locked were locking. Scratches appeared on all three of us in the same way. A handprint pushed through a curtain. A fork flew. Water came out of a wall and then vanished. And whether it fits into any neat belief system or not, that apartment absolutely changed the way I see the world. So, okay. Let me just take a breath and tell you this like we're sitting on a couch with coffee. Because this is still the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. This is my one and only first-hand brush with what I can only describe as a poltergeist. It was the late 90s, 98, I think. I was about 22, living with my boyfriend at the time, Daniel. We were broke in that very particular first place together way, so we rented this cheap little apartment that sat in this awkward gray area between the nice part of town and the maybe don't walk alone at night part. I worked at a little print shop during the day, and Daniel worked nights at a warehouse. So most evenings, we kind of tag-teamed the apartment. I'd be coming home as he was heading out. One afternoon, I got home from work. We chatted for a minute while he changed, kissed goodbye at the door, and he left for his shift. I remember locking the deadbolt behind him, doing my usual quick tidy, and turning off all the lights, because our electric bill was a monster if we weren't careful. Then I grabbed my keys and went out to do some grocery shopping. Nothing weird, totally normal. I was probably gone, 40 minutes, an hour. And when I came back, I opened the door and just stopped. The apartment was in full chaos. Every single light was on, all of them. The little lamp in the bedroom that we never used, on. The ugly fluorescent in the kitchen that we avoided because it buzzed, on. Even the light over the stove was on, and the stereo was blasting. Not just loud, like absolutely cranked as high as it would go. It was tuned to this AM talk radio station, some guy droning on about politics. Neither of us ever listened to talk radio. We were strictly mixtapes and the alternative rock preset people. This stereo, by the way, was one of those old systems with a row of preset buttons you had to push to switch stations. The station it was on wasn't anywhere near any of our presets. It wasn't like the tuner had just drifted a little. I just stood there in the doorway with my grocery bags thinking, okay, no, absolutely not. I knew that I had turned off the lights. It was our habit. It was survival. And the stereo definitely hadn't been on when I left. The first thing that really hit me, though, once I stepped inside, was the silence under the noise. Our cat, Luna, was nowhere to be seen. Normally, she would come trotting up the minute anyone opened the door, all chirps and meows, ready for attention. But this time, nothing. No jingle of her collar, no little paws on the carpet. That scared me more than the lights. I dropped the groceries on the table, walked over, and turned the stereo off. The sudden silence made everything feel even weirder. You know that heavy, charged kind of quiet? It felt like the apartment was holding its breath. All the hairs on my arms and the back of my neck were standing up. I started calling for Luna, going room to room. Nothing under the bed, nothing in the closet, not behind the couch. I checked the bathroom, and that's when I noticed something else. The bathroom sink was filled right up to the brim with water. No slow trickle from the tap, no drip. Just perfectly still, full to the edge. Like someone had plugged it, turned the water on, and then turned it off at exactly the right second. My stomach dropped. I went to the kitchen. Same thing. The kitchen sink, both sides, filled to the top with water. Again, taps completely off. No leaking, no wet floor, just this calm, full, perfectly still water. And then I finally heard her. The tiniest, muffled little meow. I followed the sound to the pantry. Now this pantry was like an in-wall cupboard with shelves inside. The door I'm talking about was above my head, like I had to stretch a bit to reach the groove on the side to open it. No knobs, no handles, just that little groove. I pulled it open, and there's Luna. Sitting way back in the corner of the top shelf, eyes huge, staring at me like, you would not believe what just happened to me. There is absolutely no way she could have gotten in there on her own. There was nothing nearby. No counter, no chair, nothing she could have used to jump up. And even if she somehow did, there's no version of reality where she's opening that door herself. At that point, my body just went, we're done. And I went straight into full freak-out mode. I grabbed the phone, landline days, and called Daniel at work. He picked up, and I just started babbling. You know when you're so scared your voice is shaking and your words all run together? That was me, pacing around the apartment, trying to tell him about the lights, the stereo, the sinks, the cat in the cabinet. He stayed really calm. He told me to leave the phone on speaker and do a walkthrough of the whole apartment, just to make sure no one had broken in and was hiding somewhere. So I did. I checked the bedroom, the closets, behind the shower curtain, under everything I could think of. No one. Nothing out of place except the extremely weird stuff. He had me look around and confirm that nothing was missing. Laptop? There. TV? There. His game console? Still plugged in. Rent money envelope? Still hidden where we'd left it. So, okay, not a robbery. I was still shaky and on the edge of hyperventilating when he said, hang on, I'm going to call the front office, see if anything happened around our place. He put me on hold for a bit, then called me back. Apparently there had been some kind of altercation right outside our building, near the apartment next door. We'd always had a weird feeling about those neighbors, like there was something sketchy going on, lots of strange visitors at odd hours, that kind of thing. The office said security, and eventually, the police had to escort a couple of really angry guys away, but that as far as they knew, no one had gone into our unit and nothing had happened directly to our apartment. Daniel came back on the line and tried to lighten the mood. He said something like, well, maybe it was a ghost trying to make it look like someone was home, so those guys wouldn't decide to break in and take our stuff. I kind of half laughed, half sobbed. Then he goes, jokingly, if it is a ghost, it better do some housework to pay for the extra electricity. I remember that very clearly because I told him, don't say that. And he laughed and said we'd talk more about it the next day when we were both off. That night, when he got home and we went out for a walk, he admitted he didn't necessarily think it was a ghost, but he did say this. If it was something paranormal, the last thing you want to do is feed it fear. In his mind, treating it lightly, joking, not getting too scared, was a way of not giving it power or attention or whatever. And since it hadn't done anything destructive, no broken dishes, no writing on the walls, the worst thing it had done was give Luna a very confusing afternoon. So his attitude was, let's just be respectful and not poke it. A few days later, though, it was his turn to be weirded out. He goes, hey, quick question. Did you vacuum before you left? I'm like, no, why? Did you maybe put the dishes away? No, I was running late. The sink was a mess when I left. Why? What's going on? He took a breath and said, okay, so I came back from picking up some stuff and the entire apartment has been vacuumed. Like, perfectly. You know those straight vacuum lines you get when you're doing a really good job? He said they were everywhere. Every room. but there were no footprints in the carpet leading to the closet where we kept the vacuum. Just these neat, precise lines, and then nothing between that and the closet door. And the dishes? All washed, all dried, all put away in the right cabinets. Not just tossed somewhere, like exactly where they belonged. Plates stacked where we always kept them, glasses in their usual row, silverware in the right slots. He checked the doors and windows, still locked from the inside. That's when he said, half joking, half serious, "I think the ghost heard me when I told it to do some housework." After that, things calmed down. We didn't have any more big, dramatic events. No more mystery water, no more blaring stereo. But Luna started doing this one thing she had never done before. She became obsessed with the bathtub. She would sit on the edge of it and just stare into the empty tub. Not playing, not pawing at anything. Just sitting there for long stretches of time, peering into it like she was watching something we couldn't see. Every time I'd walk past the bathroom and see her like that, I'd get this little chill. Over time, I developed my own theory. Nothing scientific, just a feeling. I started to wonder if maybe our polite little poltergeist had been a former tenant. Someone who might have died in that apartment, maybe even in that bathtub, and for whatever reason, hadn't really let go of it yet. Maybe, in their mind, that was still their space they were protecting. And that night with the argument next door, with angry people outside and who knows what going on, maybe they panicked for us, turned on all the lights, cranked the stereo, moved the cat to a safe little cabinet, filled the sinks as some kind of strange leftover habit or symbol. Who knows? I can't prove any of that, obviously. Maybe there's some wildly rational explanation for everything that happened, and we were just two tired young adults in a weird building at the edge of town. But here's what I know for sure. I walked into that apartment one day, and it was not how I left it. Something, or someone, turned everything on, filled every sink, and gently tucked my cat away in a place she couldn't possibly have reached. And a few days later, something, or someone, vacuumed our floors and put our dishes away better than either of us ever did. So I call it my polite poltergeist story. And whether it was a ghost or not, to this day, I still say thank you under my breath whenever something weird happens but somehow turns out okay. Just in case someone's still listening. So, this is one of those stories I still don't fully understand, but I think about it all the time. When my daughter Maya was a little over 2.5, we had an experience that still gives me chills. One afternoon, she was sitting in our living room, perched on the edge of the couch, eating sliced strawberries out of a little yellow bowl. It was just a normal day, TV humming softly in the background, sunlight coming through the blinds. Then, out of nowhere, she put the bowl down, stood up, and walked toward the front door. I remember watching her, thinking she was just going to look outside. But she stopped a few feet from the door, held out a strawberry in her tiny hand, and started talking in this quiet, polite voice, like she does when she's shy around grown-ups. She was looking up, not at eye level, not toward the window, up, like she was talking to someone taller than her. So I asked, "Hey honey, what are you doing?" Without looking at me, she said, very matter-of-factly, "I'm sharing my strawberries with the man." I got that weird feeling in my chest. You know when the room suddenly feels just a little too still? I glanced at the door, checked the porch, checked the window. No one there, just us. I tried to keep my voice light. "Oh yeah? What man?" She finally turned to look at me, like I was the one being silly, and said, "The man from before." And then went right back to holding out strawberries to nothing that I could see. I let it go in the moment, but it stuck with me. A few days later, early in the morning, she woke up and toddled out of her room. At that time, we had this tall mirror hanging in the hallway, right across from our bedroom door. She walked over, stopped in front of it, and just stared. The air felt heavy. That's the only way I can describe it. Maya, who was 12 by then, stopped at the threshold. She took one step inside, then froze and said, "I don't like it in there. I'll wait outside." Now, she's not usually dramatic about stuff like that, so I said, "Okay, that's fine. Stay where I can see you." I figured she just didn't like the smell. Kids can be sensitive like that. So my partner and I walked through the house, room by room. And honestly, I already knew it wasn't for us. The layout was weird. The energy felt off, and that rotten smell just lingered. I was standing in what I think used to be the dining room when I heard fast footsteps on the porch. Then the front door flew open. Maya was standing there, completely pale, shaking, and breathing so fast she could barely get words out. "There's a lady outside," she gasped. I went straight to her, put my hands on her shoulders, and tried to calm her down. Hey, slow down. What lady? There's nobody out there. It's just us and the realtor." She shook her head, eyes wide, staring past me like she was still seeing it. "No, I saw her. She was right there." I asked her where, and she pointed toward a spot in the yard near this old, leaning fence post. "I was looking at the grass," she said, still catching her breath. And then I looked up, and this lady was standing in front of me. She was really pale, old. Her hair was kind of gray and messy. She just stood there, looking at me, and then she was gone. Not walked away, not turned a corner. Gone. We cut the visit short after that. I told the realtor the house wasn't for us, and we drove home. Maya was quiet most of the ride. I could tell she was trying to make sense of it. That night, after she'd gone to bed, curiosity got the better of me. I started looking up the history of the house, and here's where it gets even stranger. From what I could find, an elderly couple had owned that property for many years. They'd lived most of their lives in that house. The husband had died about 10 years earlier, inside the home. The wife had passed away just a few months before we went to see it. In a town that small, with basically a few streets, a church, and a cemetery, it seemed pretty likely she had died there too. I just sat there staring at the screen, thinking about my daughter at 3, holding out strawberries to the man, and then at 12, refusing to go inside that house, and then seeing the lady in the yard. 2 different places, 2 different ages, 2 different people she described. First an old man, then an older woman. And no one else saw a thing. I still don't know what to make of it. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm just a parent who's seen her child quietly interact with something that the rest of us couldn't see. But I'll be honest, sometimes when I think back on it all, I wonder. At 3 years old, she saw a man by our front door and in the mirror. At 12, she saw a woman who had only recently passed, standing in the yard of her old home. And I can't help but ask myself, is it possible that my daughter really does see things the rest of us can't? So, I can't tell you the name of the university. If I did, anyone in Britain would probably guess it straight away. Just picture one of those very famous universities in central London, not far from Euston, with old brick buildings that always smell faintly of rain and printer ink. That's close enough. When I flew back to London that autumn, it was from Singapore this time. The plane landed in the late afternoon, that gray hour when the sky looks like wet paper. I always book those flights on purpose. You land, you stumble through arrivals, and by the time you drag your suitcase to your room, the only thing left to do is collapse and let sleep pull your body clock into the right time zone. From the station, I hauled my suitcase past the noisy main roads and turned into one of those side streets lined with tired terraces. On the corner stood a squat building of brownish brick with narrow old windows. We'll call it Harper House. Under that flat light, it looked less like student halls and more like a small, forgotten hospital. At reception, the manager gave me a practiced smile and tapped at her computer. "Room 02, she said. "Basement. It's very quiet down there. You'll sleep well." You know when someone says "very quiet" and it sounds more like a warning than a promise? It felt like that. The corridor in the basement was long and low, painted a color I couldn't quite name, somewhere between beige and sick. The lights buzzed faintly, that tired fluorescent hum. My room was at the far end. When I opened the door, the air hit me, cold and damp, like the breath of an underground tunnel after a storm. I'd been away from London long enough that it took me a second to remember. Oh, right. This is just how old buildings are here. They never really dry out. Still, something about the layout felt wrong. The ceiling was lower than it should have been. Along one wall, a fat gray pipe ran from the ceiling almost to the floor, fixed with metal brackets. If I laid on the bed and stretched out my arm, I could have touched it. It shivered now and then, so faintly I almost thought I imagined it. Later, the caretaker told me, almost casually, that it carried waste from the toilets on the floors above. That first night, lying there half awake, I listened to it. Glug, glug. A sluggish rhythm I could feel through the pillow, as if someone were pacing slowly just above my head. When I woke in the small hours, there was a distinct chill along the side of the mattress near the wall, like someone had been sitting there and just stood up. Old building, I told myself. You'll get used to it. I didn't, but I tried. By the start of my final year, my desk had disappeared under stacks of articles and half-printed drafts. I'd pinned my dissertation schedule to the wall, but the dates all seemed to be sliding closer together, like wet ink. Sleep got later and later, and the longer I stayed in that basement room, the heavier the air felt, like there was something sitting on my chest that I couldn't quite see. One Friday night, I was hunched over my laptop, half reading the same paragraph for the 5th time, when a new email popped into my inbox. The subject line was blank. The sender was rowan.mace.22@xxx. The message was just one sentence. 2. Room 02. Is it still leaking? I stared at it. You know that feeling when your brain tries to slot something into a normal explanation and just can't quite manage it? I checked the address again. Definitely a student email. Definitely the university domain. But I didn't know anyone called Rowan Mace. The next morning, on my way out, I stopped at reception and showed the manager the email. She tipped her glasses down and scrolled through something on her screen. Mace, yes. Rowan, northern lad. Dark hair, bit quiet. He was in O2 a while back. She glanced up at me. The leak was awful that year. He kept complaining about it. In the end, he moved to an upper floor. So his email still works? She frowned, clicked a few more times. That's odd, she murmured. He graduated a couple of years ago. These accounts are usually deactivated. The back of my neck prickled. I told myself, sensibly, that it must be some system quirk. Old accounts that hadn't been cleared. A harmless glitch. That night, though, the pipe in my wall got louder. It wasn't just the glugging anymore. It had shifted into a slow, deliberate thud, like footsteps taking the same 3 paces over and over, right behind the plaster. Every time I thought it had stopped, it would start again, quieter, as if it were testing how much noise I would tolerate. A day or two later, a repairman turned up on the floor. He'd been called by someone down the corridor about a dripping ceiling, But when he finished with them, he knocked on my door too. He was in his 50s, maybe, with reddened hands and those watery blue eyes people sometimes get after years in drafty buildings. His badge said E. Harper, and underneath, in tiny print, the university's estates department. "Everything all right in here?" he asked. "Any leaks?" I told him about the noise in the wall. He set down his toolbox, unfolded a ladder, and inspected the pipe where it joined the ceiling. He twisted one of the valves gently, listened for a moment, then gave a little nod, as if the building had answered him. "Old problem," he said, climbing back down. "The water in this place always tries to follow its old paths." "What does that mean?" I asked. He wiped his hands on his trousers and gave me a small, oddly kind smile. "Moisture has a memory," he said. The words lodged in my mind and wouldn't leave, like a song lyric stuck on loop. That night, the sound did quieten, for a while. By October, I couldn't stand the basement smell anymore. You know that mix of dust, detergent, and something vaguely metallic? It clung to my clothes, to my hair, even to my notes. One evening, when the rain was doing that fine, misty thing London rain does, I gave up on working and walked until I found a pub that looked soft around the edges. Warm light, steamed-up windows, people talking just loud enough that you wouldn't feel alone. I'd barely sat down with my drink when a voice beside me said, "You look like someone who's just crawled up from underground." I turned. A young woman sat a few stools away, watching me with a small, amused smile. She had pale skin, freckles across her nose, and red hair twisted into a loose knot. Her eyes were that washed-out blue that looks almost gray in low light. And I know this sounds silly, but my first thought wasn't, "She's pretty." It was, "She has the same eyes as the maintenance guy." "You've got dust on your sleeve," she added, gesturing. "Basement room," I said. "I think it's permanently in the air down there." "I know that smell," she replied. She held out a hand. "I'm Rowan Mace." My heart gave a small jump at the name. Rowan Mace. It sounded too close to the email in my inbox. Rowan Mace, for comfort. She told me she studied psychology at the same university. We chatted about classes, about how early it got dark in London, about the horrible carpet in the library. Nothing that mattered, really. But her presence was strangely quieting, like standing under a hot shower after being cold all day. As we left, she said, almost shyly, "Let's have tea sometime. Proper tea, not whatever they serve in the cafeteria." We swapped numbers. "Don't keep the light on too late." It was such an ordinary sentence, but reading it, I felt that small, wrong twist in my stomach again. The name, the email, the basement. I started writing back. "Do you know someone called Rowan?" And then deleted it. In the end, I just sent, "Okay, good night." After that, I began to see her everywhere. On the stairs in the library, leaning against the banister with a book in her hand. In the cafe near campus, where she always took the seat by the window and ordered unsweetened black tea. We never made formal plans, we just drifted into each other's orbit. Our conversations stayed light, lecturers we liked, books we pretended to have finished, the way London could feel like 3 different cities in a single day. But underneath, there was this odd rhythm, as if we both knew we were circling something we weren't naming. One afternoon, I mentioned the sounds from the pipe. "It's like someone pacing," I said. "Same stretch, back and forth. Sometimes it sounds like water, sometimes not." She set her cup down carefully. "Old buildings are creatures of habit," she said. "They walk the same paths over and over. The noise doesn't really start or stop. It just comes back to where it began." "Where did you hear that?" I asked. She hesitated, then shrugged. A friend told me once, she said. He worked with pipes, took his job very seriously. The phrasing, the calm certainty, it was almost identical to the way the repairman had spoken in my room. That March, E. Harper appeared again with his toolbox. This time, he'd been called by the room next door, but he poked his head into mine too, as if checking an old patient. He adjusted one of the valves and listened again. Sometimes tightening things makes them louder, he said softly. You've got to let them find their own way. I watched his badge glint as he moved. E. Harper, Estates. Do you know a student called Rowan? I asked, trying to sound casual. Rowan Mace? He gave a short, almost amused breath. Names blur together after a while, he said. Common enough sounds in this part of the world. After that, I couldn't quite separate them in my mind. The red-haired repairman with the blue eyes and the red-haired student with the blue eyes. They spoke with the same unhurried rhythm, as if the building itself were talking through both of them. One bright afternoon in early spring, Rowan and I sat in a small cafe off Tottenham Court Road. Light pooled on her hair, turning the red almost copper. I'd been turning the question over in my mind for days. Finally, I just asked, Hey, random question. Do you know anyone called Rowan Mace, with an A instead of an E? Her fingers paused on the rim of her cup. That's a pretty common sort of name, she said lightly. Why? No reason, I lied. It just sounded familiar. She let it go. When the bill came, she reached for the receipt and scribbled something on the back. Send me your dissertation draft when you're ready, she said, sliding it over. I'm good at spotting grammar stuff. Occupational hazard. Her handwriting was neat and looping. Under her number, she'd written, Rowan Mace. 2 N's in the first name, an extra I in the surname. Relief washed over me. For a moment, it felt like I'd been holding my breath since that first email and could finally exhale. Oh, I said, almost laughing. So it's Rowan with 2 N's? Always, she said, smiling. You must have heard it wrong before. Outside, we walked together for a bit. She told me about her father, how he stayed at home painting landscapes in a flat near Russell Square, how he disliked visitors, how he could go days without seeing anyone but her. Maybe I'll walk you home sometime, I said. If you're not afraid of him, she laughed. A week later, after a late film, I did walk her home. Her building was one of those red brick blocks near Russell Square, with a stairwell that smelled faintly of damp and old cooking. The banister was smooth from decades of students sliding their hands along it. At her door, she hesitated, then said, It's a bit messy, but do you want to come in for tea? I said yes before I had time to overthink it. Inside, it was the opposite of messy. Everything was tidy, almost too tidy. Mugs stacked by size, books lined up by height, shoes paired with their toes facing the same direction. Dark, abstract paintings hung on the walls, all in the same muted palette. While she went into the kitchen to put the kettle on, I wandered over to the small desk by the window. A laptop sat closed there, with a white label stuck to the lid. The same sort of label was on the notebook beside it. In block capitals, someone had written, Rowan Mace. Not Rowan, not Mace. Exactly the name from that first email. My heartbeat climbed into my throat. I leaned closer, as if the letters might rearrange themselves if I gave them a chance. From the kitchen, her voice floated out. Milk or no milk? No milk, I called back, trying to sound normal. She came in with 2 steaming mugs and set mine down on a coaster so precisely, you'd have thought the table might scold her if she missed. You told me you spell your name with 2 N's, I said, nodding at the labels. And differently at the end. Why does this say Rowan Mace? For a moment, she didn't move at all. Then she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Those are old, she said. My father made those labels. He likes spelling it that way. He thinks it looks tidier. Before I could answer, a man's voice came from the next room. Low, northern, and horribly familiar. "Add more water when you make the tea," he called. "You'll scald the leaves." The accent hit me like cold water. I'd heard it in my room months ago, remarking that moisture has a memory. I'd heard it in the corridor, telling me that old problems come back. I took a step towards the half-open door to the other room, but Rowan's hand caught my wrist. She was still smiling, but her grip was stronger than it had any right to be. "Don't go in," she said quietly. "He doesn't like being disturbed." "Your father?" I asked. She squeezed once, then let go. "He's particular." The voice came again, muffled but clear. "Is the water boiling yet?" Ice slid down my spine. I suddenly didn't want to see his face. I didn't want to match the voice to a body, and then have to remember it every time the pipe in my wall twitched. "Drink your tea," Rowan said, her tone light again. "He'll be quiet soon." We never spoke about the labels after that. I finished my tea, made some excuse about an early start, and left. Walking back through the drizzle, Harper House looming in the distance, one thought went around and around in my head. If she was Rowan Mace, then who was Rowan Mace? And if she wasn't, what exactly was I sharing my walls with? A few weeks later, she called me out of the blue. Her voice sounded thinner than usual, as if the signal were stretching it. "I'm transferring to Glasgow," she said. "It's all a bit sudden, some family stuff." "When?" I asked. "Next month." A pause. "Thank you for talking with me this year. It's been nice." "Good luck," I said. "Really." We didn't say much else. When we hung up, I sat on the end of the bed, watching the pipe pulse gently in the wall. The next day, an email arrived from a new address. The subject line was, "Moving." The sender, rowan.mace@xxx. The message said, "I'm moving to Glasgow next month. Rowan." I stared at that double N for a long time. Then I went back to my inbox and opened the old message, the one from months ago. To Room 02. Is it still leaking? Rowan.mace.22. But somehow, in my mind, they had both begun to blur. I never replied to her email. I don't know if that was kind or cowardly. Maybe both. June 17th, 2025. My last full day in that room. I packed my suitcase slowly, folding the year into piles. Notes I'd keep, clothes I'd donate, memories I'd pretend to forget. The corridor outside was almost silent. Most people had already gone home or were out celebrating. Sometime in the afternoon, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, E. Harper was standing there, toolbox in hand. "Leaving today?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning," I said. "Thought I'd hand the key in tonight." He stepped inside without really waiting for an invitation, glanced up at the pipe, and pressed his palm gently against it, as if taking its temperature. Then he knelt, adjusted a valve I hadn't even noticed before, and the pipe gave a long, soft sigh. "There," he said. "That should stay quiet for a while." "For the next person?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. He looked around the room, at the faint marks on the walls where I'd blue-tacked notes, at the slight dip in the mattress where I always slept. "Old places have good memories," he said. "You know when someone says something perfectly ordinary, but it lands like a warning?" That's how it felt. Later, at reception, I slid my key across the desk. "All done?" the manager asked. "Yeah." I hesitated then. "Can I ask, that repairman, Mr. Harper, does he have any family? Kids? A daughter, maybe?" She looked genuinely surprised. Him? Eric? Not that I've ever heard. He's been with the States for over 10 years, always on his own. Fixes our leaks, disappears. No visitors, no one asking after him. She chuckled. Bit of a hermit, that one. She tapped the drawer behind her absent-mindedly. We've got all his paperwork on file, of course. Passport, contracts, all that. Our most reliable man. I nodded, murmured a thanks, and stepped outside. The air felt different, warmer. The kind of June sunshine London gets on its best days, when the sky actually remembers how to be blue. Students were dragging suitcases along the pavement, laughing, arguing about who'd left the frying pan unwashed for months. As I turned the corner, I glanced back at Harper House. One of the basement windows, the one that belonged to room 02, was propped open an inch, just enough to let air in, or out. I remembered something Rowan had said early on. Old houses walk the same paths. Maybe people do too. Maybe emails and voices and footsteps all find their way back to the same roots, even when the names on the labels change. Since she left for Scotland, if she really went, I haven't heard from her again. No texts, no emails, no chance encounters on stairwells. But a few days ago, I passed Harper House on the bus and saw new students arriving, wrestling their suitcases through the front door, smiling in that hopeful, tired way. And I caught myself wondering if any of them would be sent down to the basement. If any of them would stand where I stood, key in hand, breathing that cold, tunnel-smelling air. And if, on their first night, lying in the dark of room 02, they'd fall asleep to the sound of steady, careful footsteps pacing just above their heads, walking the same 3 steps they've always walked, over and over, down the inside of the wall. So, let me tell you about this night I'll probably never forget. I live in Tacoma, Washington, and there's this place called Point Defiance. If you've never been, it's this huge, wooded park right by the water. Beautiful in the daytime, kind of storybook eerie at night. Tucked inside, there's an old pagoda that people around here say is haunted. The story goes that back in the 1920s, a widower, some people call him Mr. Harlan, took his own life in what used to be the trolley restroom in that pagoda. Since then, the building's had more than its fair share of bad luck. It's burned down, been rebuilt, renovated, and now it's used for weddings and events and all kinds of happy stuff. But the stories never really stopped. People say they hear strange sounds, see faces in the windows when the building's supposed to be empty. One groundskeeper, I'll call him Dave, swears he heard someone whisper his name from the basement when he was locking up alone. No one was down there. Now, that was about all I could dig up online and from local chatter, so as far as I could tell, I might have been one of the first people to go out there specifically to check for anything paranormal. No team, no equipment, just me being curious. Or dumb. Take your pick. I decided to go super early in the morning, like around 3:45 a.m. It was that kind of time where the sky's not quite night, not quite morning, just this heavy, in-between darkness. I parked near the waterfront and took one of the trails that winds up to the pagoda. At first, honestly, nothing felt too wild. Unsettling, sure, but that's just what happens when you're alone in the woods before sunrise with a flashlight and a bunch of ghost stories rattling around in your head. The pagoda looked almost peaceful from a distance, lit faintly by a couple of dim lamps. No voices, no apparitions, no cold spots. Just me, my breath, and the crunch of my boots on the path. After a while, I kind of relaxed. I started thinking, okay, maybe this is just one of those local legends that got bigger in the retelling. I was already mentally writing it off like, Well, that was a bust, but at least I got some fresh air. A little ways away from the pagoda, maybe 50, 60 feet, there's this small Japanese-style pond and a little shrine by it. It's really pretty, even in the dark. I walked over there and just stood for a bit, looking at the water, listening to the quiet. You could hear the faint waves from the sound in the distance, some leaves shifting, nothing special. I turned to leave, took a step, and that's when I heard it. Another step, but not mine. It sounded like a footfall landing just a fraction of a second after I put my foot down, like that cliché movie moment where a character stops and they hear a trailing step behind them. It came from maybe 10 or 15 feet back, on the path behind me. Clear as day. One echoing step. I froze. You know that feeling when your body reacts before your brain catches up? My whole system went on alert. I swung my flashlight around behind me. Nothing. Just the empty path, the trees, the pagoda off to the side. No person. No animal. No wind gust that could have explained it. That's when the other sound started. Next to the shrine, there's this wide, grassy area. Pretty flat, pretty open. My flashlight is no joke. I could scan that whole field easily. There were a few trees closer to me, but beyond that, it was just open grass. The weird part? There weren't any twigs. Not in the spots I was hearing it from. And every time I swept my light across the field, there was nothing. No deer, no raccoon, nothing moving at all. You know how you can usually talk yourself down like, okay, it's probably an animal, calm down. I couldn't do that. I just knew, in that deep, primal way, that it wasn't an animal. I can't prove that, but that's how it felt in the moment. Like every instinct I had was saying, nope, this is different. My guard shot straight back up. That easy, casual curiosity I walked in with was gone. I decided I'd had enough sightseeing for one morning and started back down the trail toward the waterfront. That's when it got worse. As I walked, the footsteps didn't stop. If anything, they got more active. It was like something was circling me. Never too close, never right at my back, but just around. Left, then right, then a bit behind. Almost like it was keeping a perimeter, staying just outside the beam of my flashlight. The sound had this pacing quality, like someone studying me, taking a few steps, stopping, shifting position, starting again. I kept checking over my shoulder, sweeping the light through the trees, up the trail, over the grass. Still nothing. I can't explain it better than this. I felt like I was being watched. Not just looked at, but examined. Judged, almost. Like I didn't belong there and something was trying to decide what to do with me. Then came the part that really stuck with me. Just as I was leaving the immediate area around the pagoda, like right when I passed this invisible edge where the building and pond and shrine start to fall behind you, I got hit with this wave of emotion. It was so sudden, it actually made me stop walking. 1 second I was on high alert, but still basically just scared and annoyed. The next second, it was like this enormous weight dropped straight onto my chest. I was overwhelmed with this deep, heavy sadness and fear. But not my fear. That's the best way I can put it. It felt foreign, like someone else's grief had been poured into me. You know those shivers you get when you listen to really powerful music? Those full-body chills? It felt like that, but instead of awe or excitement, it was this intense mix of sorrow and anxiety. My skin prickled. My eyes stung like I was about to cry over something I didn't understand. I suddenly felt cold all over, even though I'd been walking and my heart was racing. I remember thinking very clearly, these feelings aren't mine. The emotion stayed with me as I kept walking, but the farther I got from the pagoda area, the more it started to ease up, like it was fading with the distance, step by step. The sounds behind me slowly died away too. No more phantom footsteps, no more snapping where nothing was visible, just the normal park noises and my own breathing. Even then, I still felt watched. Not in a threatening way at that point, more like whoever or whatever it was just standing at the edge, seeing me off. That sensation stuck with me until I turned a bend in the trail and lost sight of the pagoda and the pond completely. And then, suddenly, everything felt normal again. Just a dark, quiet park before sunrise. So yeah, that's my experience. No full-bodied apparitions, no furniture flying across rooms, nothing you'd see in a dramatic movie. But something out there responded to me being there. I'm convinced of that. So, this one's for my dad. His name was never in any headline or history book, but yeah, this is for him. My dad, Mark Wilson, worked the graveyard shift. Literally. He was the overnight caretaker at this old cemetery on the edge of a little town outside Knoxville, way past where the streetlights end and the road turns to gravel. The kind of place where even the moonlight looks like it's second-guessing itself. On paper, his job was simple. Keep folks from sleeping on the graves, make sure nobody was sneaking in to pry off copper vases, keep the grounds respectable, as the management liked to say. But Dad would look at me with that serious, tired half-smile of his and say, "It ain't the living that bothers me out there." And he meant it. I only went with him once. I was around 10, give or take. Mom was on a double shift at the hospital, and instead of leaving me with a neighbor, he brought me along. Said I could sleep in the little guard shack while he did his rounds. The shack was no bigger than a storage closet. It smelled like burnt coffee, old paper, and wet dirt. There was this tiny space heater in the corner that hissed and rattled like it was offended it had to work at all. I remember curling up on this worn-out vinyl cot with his old army jacket over me. It still smelled like cigarettes and whatever cheap aftershave he bought at the drugstore. That smell made me feel safe, like he just stepped out for a minute and would be back any second. I fell asleep to the sound of that heater buzzing and the soft scratch of his pen on a logbook. The first time I woke up, it was silent. Not late at night quiet, just wrong. The heater was dead. No hiss, no buzz, nothing. The silence felt heavy, like the air was pressing down on my chest. And then I heard it. That whistle. My dad's whistle was sharp, clean. The kind of sound that could slice right through kids screaming, lawnmowers, thunderstorms, you name it. That's how he'd call me in at dusk. 2 short blasts from the porch, and I knew the game was over. But hearing it out there, in the middle of a sleeping graveyard, with no wind, no traffic, nothing, it took every bit of warmth right out of me. He was somewhere outside, past the shack window, out near the older headstones under the big oak trees, where the ground sank a little and the stones leaned like they were tired. I wiped a clear patch on the foggy glass with my sleeve and squinted. I could just make out the beam of his flashlight moving slow, back and forth. It wasn't his normal, brisk, checking the grounds walk. The light drifted from grave to grave, then lifted higher, like he was looking at something standing between the stones. Something that shouldn't have been there. The whistle came again. But this time it was different. Lower, stretched out, and shaking just a little at the end. "Daddy," I whispered. He didn't answer. I watched the flashlight's beam hang in the dark for a second, like it was thinking about where to go next. Then it just went out. No click, no flicker, just gone. I must have passed out again because the next thing I remember, it was morning. Gray light was seeping in around the edges of the blinds. The heater had sputtered back to life and was making this half-hearted clunking sound. On the desk beside me, my dad's flashlight lay on its side, still beaded with dew. Dad was in the corner, in this old folding chair, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't blinked all night. He didn't say much on the drive home. We rolled down the cracked country road, and every few miles he'd purse his lips like he was about to whistle, just out of habit, and then stop himself, jaw tightening. Years later, after he was gone, I was going through a box of his things in Mom's attic. Old uniforms, a coffee-stained thermos, some photos with dates scribbled on the back. At the bottom, I found this little spiral notebook. Most of it was boring, honestly. Dates, weather notes, which plots needed trimming. But then there were a few pages where his handwriting changed, sloppier, rushed. One line said, "Heard whispering near the north fence again. Thought it was the wind. It wasn't." Another, "Something by the big oak tree. Whistled. It whistled back." I just sat there, staring at that line for a long time. Then there was this one. Little girl near section B, barefoot, vanished when light hit her. My skin went cold reading that, even in the middle of Mom's bright, cluttered attic. The last entry was dated the night I went with him. It said, "Squirts with me tonight. Can't let her see what's moving by the tree line. If it whistles again, I'm not answering." I remember tracing those words with my thumb. Can't let her see. He'd never said it out loud, but that was Dad in a nutshell. Tired, scared maybe, but standing between me and whatever was out there. Sometimes now, when I can't sleep, and that happens more than I admit, I'll be lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and I swear I hear it. That same sharp whistle. Not in the house, not right outside the window, just far enough away that I can pretend I imagined it. Thin and hollow, like it had to travel a long way to find me. And for just a second, I can smell that damp Tennessee air again. The kind that wraps around you like fog, cold, earthy, full of things that have been buried a long, long time and don't like to be disturbed. And I think of my dad. I see him standing out there between the graves, boots sinking a little into the soft ground, goosebumps on his forearms, that flashlight trembling just enough for only him to notice. I imagine him hearing that whistle, his own sound thrown back at him from the dark, and, squaring his shoulders, setting his jaw. And in that quiet space between heartbeats, I can almost hear him say, in that low, steady voice of his, "Not tonight. Not while she's here." Hello everyone, it's me again, Mr. Paranormal M. It's finally time to sit down with the mic and tell some paranormal stories to help you sleep better. This is always my favorite moment of the whole day. I really love this job because I feel much closer to everyone. And of course, thank you for always listening and supporting me. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to receive the fastest notifications about the latest videos. And don't hesitate to send me your stories. Now put on your headphones and let's get started. Okay, so, as most people around me have figured out by now, I've had a lot of experiences with ghosts and the paranormal. This isn't a once-in-a-while thing for me. I have spirits that basically live alongside us and check in every day, the way neighbors do. The ones I see most often are my good friend Riley, his twin brother Logan, and my husband's little shadow, Maya. Those three are kind of my regulars. They drift in and out of rooms, hang around when we're talking, and sometimes they're closer than the living people in my life. They've been with us long enough that I worry about them the way I worry about family. There are a few others who stay mostly in the house. There's Eli, who usually hides behind my mother-in-law's favorite chair. I'll see him crouched there, playing jacks on the floor, completely absorbed in his game, like a kid who never grew out of it. Then there's an indigenous teen who spends a lot of time by my mother-in-law's bedroom window, pacing back and forth. He has this protective energy, like he's on guard duty, because there's another spirit outside that same window that constantly tries to get in. You can feel the tension sometimes, like a quiet standoff. And then we've got the non-ghosts, the other entities. Two of them stay with us pretty regularly, Zeke and Lena. Zeke is technically a succubus, and Lena is an incubus. Don't ask me why the labels don't line up with what people usually expect. Trust me, I've given up trying to make it make sense. I let them pick what I'd call them, and those are the names they chose. That's kind of the theme in my life. I meet very odd beings, and half the time, I just roll with it. We also get visitors who drop in from time to time, like my stepdad and my husband's grandmother. They don't hang around constantly, but they come through enough that I can tell when they're near. The room feels a little fuller, a little warmer. And then there are the animals. A couple of dogs, more cats than I can honestly count. And yes, even fish. The dog spirits are the easiest for me to recognize. The three that show up the most are my husband's dog Muffin, my girl Kaya, and one other that just kind of tags along with whoever has food. Muffin was a boxer beagle mix, and she was one of the sweetest dogs I've ever known. Just pure wiggly love with paws. Kaya was my baby. She was supposed to be a pit bull and Rottweiler St. Bernard mix, but she grew into this long-haired, wild-looking dog who didn't quite fit any of those breeds. My family is pretty convinced her dad was part coyote, or maybe even wolf. It would explain her build and her coloring, and the way she'd stare off into the woods like she remembered something we couldn't see. The cats? There are honestly too many to keep track of. My family has had cats for as long as I can remember, so there's kind of a revolving door of cat spirits. The one who stands out the most is my son's cat, Midnight. Yes, he named her. He called her Mimi when he was being sweet. She was pitch black with a tiny white streak on her chin, like she'd dipped her face in milk. Every so often she'll pop back in, and because my current dog is about the size of a large cat, we'll catch a glimpse of Midnight and think it's Pumpkin, our little dog, slipping around the corner. Then Pumpkin comes trotting in from the opposite direction, and we just look at each other like, okay, that was definitely the cat. Something a lot of psychics or mediums won't always say out loud is that we are constantly surrounded by spirits, ghosts, non-human entities, and even what I'd call demons, though not in the strict Christian sense. They're around us in everyday life, way more than most people realize. And here's another thing that ghost shows and dramatic stories usually leave out. Not all entities are evil. They're not all out to hurt you or ruin your life. Most of them are just trying to navigate whatever living their death looks like for them. They have routines, attachments, habits, just like we do. So if you ever move into a new place and feel a presence, or you're out somewhere and you sense a spirit nearby, try not to jump straight to fear. For the most part, they're not there to harm you. They're just there, existing, curious, maybe a little confused, sometimes protective. If you can remember that not everything unseen is out to get you. It makes sharing this world, and whatever overlaps with it, a lot less terrifying and a lot more human. You know, every time we drive along the river near the Astoria-Megler Bridge, I can't help looking up toward that old fort on the Washington side. Fort Columbia. If you're heading out toward Long Beach, you actually pass right underneath it. Most people just keep going. But that place, it has its hooks in me. The fort's been there since the turn of the 1900s, built back when everyone was terrified of enemy ships sliding up the Columbia River. These days, it's a quiet little state park and historical site. Picnic tables, interpretive signs, the usual nothing to see here vibe. But there is so much more going on than the brochures let on. I went there for the first time years ago, when my partner, back then he was just my boyfriend, Leo, and I came up to visit his family in Washington. He knew I was a history nerd, so he suggested we check the fort out. Honestly, he probably thought I'd just get excited about cannons and old brickwork. And I did. At first. See, I don't usually read up on haunted stories before I visit a place. I like to go in clean, if that makes sense. I want to feel it for myself before other people's experiences get in my head. So I had no idea what people said about Fort Columbia. I just knew it was old, and old places remember things. From the parade ground, you can see the bridge stretching across the water, and on a clear day, you can even make out the Astoria column way off in the distance. It's beautiful in that quiet, melancholy way. Like the whole place is permanently stuck between then and now. The first time we walked up toward the barracks, I felt it immediately. You know that feeling when you walk into a crowded room and everyone stops talking and looks at you? That's what it was like, except the barracks were empty. I hadn't even gone all the way inside yet. I was just standing there in the doorway, and suddenly I could feel men watching me. Dozens of them. Not hostile, just curious, a little wary. It wasn't just from the barracks either. Across the way, near what used to be the officers' quarters, I caught this distinct sense of a woman and at least 2 children. I never saw them clearly, but it felt like a mother trying to keep her kids still while they peeked out from behind her skirts to look at the strange visitor wandering around their fort. All of that, honestly, I could handle. I've felt spirits before. That kind of background hum is almost normal to me in old places. But the bunker? The artillery bunker is different. The minute we stepped down into it, the air changed. It felt heavier, like something was pressing against my chest. There were soldiers down there too. Spirits moving around, doing their jobs, checking equipment that hasn't existed for decades. Most of them didn't care that we were there. They just brushed past like we were ghosts to them. And then there was the other thing. I call it the shadow because I still have no better name for it. It isn't just a dark shape in the corner. It's like the absence of light and sound and warmth all at once. Even when I couldn't see it fully, I could feel it. The way you can tell someone is staring at you from behind without hearing or seeing anything. On that first visit, I tried to ignore it, pretend it was my imagination. But that only works for so long. We were walking through the bunker, my hand trailing along the cold concrete wall. And every few steps I kept catching it out of the corner of my eye, always slightly off to my left. Always just far enough away that if I turned my head quickly, it would slip out of focus. The fear hit me hard. And I've dealt with dark things before. Entities that didn't feel human. Places that hold on to anger. But this was new. This was deeper. Older. Wrong in a way I still can't quite put into words. Eventually, I saw it more clearly. I've encountered things without faces before, but this one felt like it wanted me to know it was aware of me. Not curious, not indifferent, focused. I froze. My whole body went cold. Hands, feet, even my scalp. I remember thinking, oh, this is bad. This is really, really bad. That's when Leo moved. He didn't see what I saw, not fully, but he could tell something was wrong. He stepped in front of me, just instinctively, putting himself between me and that thing. For a few seconds, it was like the air thinned out around us, like the bunker itself was holding its breath. And then, just like that, it was gone. Or at least, it felt like it retreated. We left shortly after that. I didn't say much until we were back in the car, and even then I could tell Leo was watching me out of the corner of his eye, like he was waiting for me to say, "Just kidding, I'm fine." I wasn't fine. The weird thing is, I knew I'd go back, and I have. We've been to the fort several times since then. Every time we go, Leo, now my husband, stays close to me in the bunker, almost like it's become our unspoken rule. He'll crack a joke, take a picture of the view, act casual, but the second we head down into that concrete tunnel, his hand finds mine or settles on my back, steady and grounding. The soldiers are still there. The women and children are still there. The fort is still as beautiful and heartbroken as ever. And the shadow is still there too. Sometimes I forget about it until we're halfway down the steps, and then that familiar pressure settles back over my shoulders. I don't always see it, but I can feel when it's paying attention. It's like the temperature drops just a few degrees, and the sounds from outside get muffled. Like we've stepped out of the world and into someone else's memory. Since that first trip, I finally let myself listen to some of the stories people tell about Fort Columbia. Legends about soldiers who died there, families who lived on base, rumors about people sneaking in at night to mess with seances and Ouija boards and whatever else TikTok tells them is a good idea. Some of it might be true. Some of it is definitely exaggerated. But here's the part that bothers me. None of those stories explain this thing. Not the faceless shadow. Not the way its presence feels so out of place. Like it doesn't quite belong to the fort, but it's attached to it anyway. I've heard whispers that people come out there after dark, breaking into buildings, trying to stir things up for a scare. Maybe they woke something up they didn't understand. Maybe they opened a door and never really closed it. I don't know. What I do know is this. If I'm scared of it, and I work with this kind of energy more than most people, I can't imagine what that shadow feels like to someone who has abilities they don't even know they have. Someone who's sensitive, but hasn't learned how to protect themselves yet. Someone who just thought they were going on a cute little historical day trip. I keep telling myself I need to go back with a clearer intention, not just to visit, but to really sit with it, to try to understand what it is, or at least what it wants, to see if it's something bound to that place, or something that wandered in looking for a foothold. Part of me is terrified, and part of me feels like the fort is asking me to, like it's tired of holding this thing alone. It's the night of April 26th, and I'm feeling miserable, with one of those annoying little colds that isn't bad enough to justify dramatic whining, but just bad enough to make you sneeze every 4 minutes. My husband, Daniel, is technically retired now, but he's still a champion insomniac, so to spare him my sniffling and coughing, I took myself downstairs to sleep on the couch and scroll on my phone for a while. At some point I dozed off, phone in hand. When I blinked awake, I checked the time. 1:37 a.m. exactly. No reason. I just remember seeing the numbers and thinking, ugh, really? I decided I was up for a bit, so I opened the biography I'd been reading, one of those old Hollywood stories full of scandals and studio gossip, and started another chapter. I got completely sucked in. You know how it is when the rest of the house is quiet and the phone glow makes this little bubble of light around you? It was just me, the couch, and this dead movie star's bad decisions. And then, out of nowhere, it sounded like a tiny tornado exploded in the foyer. I mean that literally. 1 second, silence. The next, this whirring, churning rush of air, like someone had turned on an industrial fan inside a closet. It was loud. The weird part was, it made absolutely no sense. The weather outside was perfectly calm. No rain, no thunder. Just a still, ordinary night. And even if it had been storming, our front door and windows are old but solid. We don't get drafts like that. There was just no way for wind to be doing whatever that was. Our foyer is this small square space, maybe 8 by 8, right where everything meets. The stairs going up, a swinging door into the old butler's pantry and kitchen, and the big archway that opens into the living room where I was sitting. The tornado, or whatever it was, seemed to be stuck there at first, swirling in that little crossroads of the house. I sat up and looked. Nothing. No curtains moving. No papers flying. The usual mess on the foyer table. Mail, a scarf, a couple of receipts I keep meaning to throw away, was just sitting there behaving itself. Not even a flutter. That's when the spooked feeling kicked in. I put my phone down and just listened. The sound changed. The wind pushed through the oak swing door to the pantry with this heavy wham, as if someone had shoved the door open hard. Then it rushed through the pantry and into the kitchen, and I heard a sharp thwack against our old wooden kitchen table. It genuinely sounded like something invisible had body slammed it. I froze. Then it moved again, across to the far side of the kitchen, toward the east wall. There was another hit, this time against one of the upper cabinets, hard enough that I heard the dishes inside rattle from where I was in the living room. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't the house settling. It was forceful, deliberate sounding. And then came the part that really got under my skin. After the banging, there was this short series of clicks and pops. Not like the house creaking or pipes knocking. Different. It was irregular too, like a pattern trying to form and almost making it, but not quite. The closest way I can describe it is that it felt like an attempt at speech. Not in any language, obviously, but there was something strangely intentional about it. Finally, I heard what sounded like heavy, slow footsteps. Thump, 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 crossing toward the back door. Then, silence. Just the ordinary quiet of our sleeping house. I tried, very bravely I might add, to be rational about it. Old house, weird acoustics. Maybe the furnace did something odd. Maybe a branch fell just right. My brain started grabbing for any explanation it could find. I picked up my phone and tried to go back to reading, but my eyes were just sliding over the words. My heart wouldn't settle. Finally, I thought, you know what? I don't have to be brave. I can just go upstairs. So I did. I crept up the stairs, half expecting to hear that strange wind start up again behind me. But the house was quiet. When I peeked into the bedroom, Daniel looked like he was actually asleep. For once. I figured if he'd heard anything, he would have been up pacing, or at least sitting in bed blinking at the ceiling. Since he seemed peaceful, I didn't say a word. I just slipped under the covers, tried not to cough in his direction, and eventually drifted off. Morning came, and with it, that maybe I dreamed it feeling. My cold had mostly cleared up, which helped me convince myself that I'd probably been a little feverish, a little fuzzy-headed, maybe half-dreaming. It all sounded more dramatic in my memory than it had really been, right? That's what I told myself while I made coffee. Then Daniel shuffled into the kitchen, hair sticking up, and squinted at me. "What on earth was going on down here last night?" he asked. "You were stomping around the kitchen, banging cabinets. Did you have a full-blown snack attack or what?" I just stared at him, because I hadn't been in the kitchen. I hadn't even gotten off the couch until I came upstairs. And that's when my little, maybe I imagined it theory quietly packed its bags and left. Alright, let me tell you a story I heard that still gives me chills when I think about it. So, do you believe in life after death? In spirits that kind of overlap with our world, like two TV channels playing at the same time. You can't always see the other one, but sometimes the signal crosses. This story came from a car battery shop owner in Pathum Thani, Thailand. And unlike most ghost stories that happen at 3 a.m. in the dark, this one took place in bright, normal, weekday morning sunlight. The shop owner's name is Noon. She runs a little battery shop with her husband, Art. Their place is one of those local shops where everyone in the area knows, yeah, you can just show up early. They'll already be awake. That day, around 7 a.m., the shutters weren't fully open yet, but Noon and Art were already moving things around, getting ready. As they're sweeping and setting up, a car slowly pulls up to the front. Noon recognizes it right away. Regular customer. Same stickers on the back window, same slight dent on the bumper. The driver, a middle-aged uncle type, gets out and walks over to Art. "Art, can you help me change the battery on another car at my house? This one's fine, but the other one won't start." They chat a bit, just normal talk. While they're talking, the back door of the car opens. Out steps this little girl, around 8 or 9, wearing bright yellow pajamas with big cartoon ducks all over them. Her hair is in slightly messy pigtails, and she's got that just woke up face. She walks straight past everyone and goes to play with Noon's golden retriever, Lucky, who's tied near the front of the shop. Lucky is usually picky about strangers, but with this girl, He's wagging his tail like crazy, licking her hands, rolling over for belly rubs. Noon looks at them and smiles. She calls out, "Nong khao mai len khang nai mai? Dio ron na loop." "Sweetie, wanna come play inside? It'll get hot out here." The girl just smiles shyly and says, "Mai pen rai ka. Nu yu trong ni dai." "It's okay. I can stay here." A few minutes later, the dad finishes talking to Art and says, "Okay, follow me to my house in like 10 minutes, all right? I'll go send my daughter to school first." He closes the door, and the little girl hops back into the car with him. The car pulls away like normal. So Noon sits on the back of their motorbike, holding a brand new battery on her lap, while Art drives. It's not far, about 5 minutes away. They ride into this older, gated community. Nothing fancy, just an older neighborhood where the security guard is half asleep. You know the type. The front gate is already open, no checking IDs or anything, so they just drive in. They find the house easily. 2-story place, white walls, bit faded but still clearly lived in. When they pull up, the gate is open. The lights inside are on. They can hear a TV running from the living room. From the kitchen, there's the sound of pans clinking and someone cooking. They even catch the smell of fried eggs and garlic. Classic Thai breakfast vibes. Everything feels completely normal. Lively, even. The customer walks out of the front door, same guy from earlier, and greets them like nothing strange has ever happened in his life. He leads them to a white sedan parked in the driveway and asks Art to replace the battery. While Art is working, Noon stands nearby, just making small talk with the owner like locals do. She says, "Your daughter is really cute. Those duck pajamas are adorable." He pauses. "My daughter?" Noon nods. "Yeah, the girl who played with my dog this morning. She came out of your car." He frowns a bit and says, "I went to your shop alone." Now Noon is the one looking confused. "No, she was with you. Fair skin, around 8 or 9 years old, wearing yellow duck pajamas, long hair, pigtails." The man goes quiet for a moment. Then he calls his wife out from inside and asks Noon to tell her what she saw. The wife listens, and as Noon describes the girl's face and height, the woman suddenly starts tearing up. Then she just breaks down crying. Through her sobs, she says she had a miscarriage about 8 years ago. They always imagined that if the baby had lived, she'd be around that age by now. In Thai belief, Noon explains, when someone dies before their destined time, their spirit doesn't cross over right away. It stays in our world and continues to age year by year, like it's still living the life it was supposed to have. Only when it reaches the age it was meant to live can it finally move on. So in that moment, the mom is convinced. The girl Noon saw might have been the child she never got to meet. Now, Art hears all this but doesn't really believe it. He's more focused on the battery, tightening screws and checking the terminals. The dad, maybe trying to prove that there's a logical explanation, calls his actual daughter downstairs. "Luke, lo manoid am I? Sweetie, can you come down for a second?" A girl comes down the stairs, maybe 6 years old, darker skin from playing sports, short hair, wearing a school uniform. She looks nothing like the girl Noon saw. At this point, Noon is just confused. Did she imagine everything? Art finishes installing the battery. The owner tells them, "Wait here. I'll go inside and get the money." So they wait. 5 minutes pass. Then 10. Then 15. Noon starts feeling uneasy. The TV is still on. They can still hear faint sounds inside the house, but no one comes out. She and Art keep exchanging glances like, "What's taking so long?" And then Noon sees it. From where she's standing, she can see the bottom part of the staircase through the open door. Slowly, she notices a small pair of feet coming down each step. Bare feet. As the figure comes into view, she sees yellow duck pajamas. It's the same girl from the shop. The little girl steps into the doorway, looks straight at them, and cheerfully calls out, "Ow, young wisset igluk, huh?" "Oh, you haven't finished changing the battery yet?" Noon, stunned, manages to answer, "Riep roi loka, ra kun pa ongan mahai." "We're done already, just waiting for your dad to bring the money." The girl nods. "Gyonu bei bok pa hai naka." "I'll go tell my dad." Then she turns around and walks back inside. Noon and Art just stand there, frozen. Art suddenly says, very firmly, "Bye, glapran kan lui." "Let's go. We're going back to the shop." Noon starts to protest. "But the money." "Bai ton ni lui." "Now." There's something in his voice that makes her listen. She climbs back onto the bike. As they pull out of the driveway, Noon, still confused, instinctively turns her head to look back. Art snaps, louder this time. "Ya han bei mong." Don't look back. But you know how it is. When someone tells you not to look, you want to look even more. So she does. And what she sees nearly makes her lose her grip on the battery. The lively neighborhood from earlier is gone. The house they were just at, the open gate, the warm lights, the sound of TV, the smell of breakfast, replaced by a locked, rusting gate, windows coated in thick dust, dead leaves piled up in corners, vines crawling up the walls of every house. The entire street looks like it's been abandoned for years. No lights, no sound, no people. Just an empty, forgotten street. They ride back to the shop in silence. As soon as they arrive, Noon calls one of her close friends who knows that area well. She asks, "Hey, what's going on with that old gated neighborhood near? We were just there." Her friend responds, "That place? That street's been empty for a long time already. No one lives there anymore. Why?" That night, Noon and Art talk about it over and over again. Art, being practical, says one thing though. Ghost or not, I'm not giving away a brand new battery. When they return to the entrance of the neighborhood, the main gate is now closed, and there's a big sign hanging there. Ham Khao, do not enter. That sign definitely wasn't there in the morning. They look at each other. Art shrugs, the way Thai uncles do when they've already decided. He squeezes the motorbike through a side gap and drives in anyway. They ride slowly down the same street. In daylight, it's even clearer. The whole area is abandoned. Houses are dusty, gardens overgrown. No curtains, no movement, no signs of life. When they reach the same house, the gate is locked with a chain. The driveway is covered in weeds. There's no white sedan, no sound, no TV, just silence. Art climbs over the gate while Noon waits outside, peeking through the bars. A minute later, he calls out, "Noon, look over there." She stands on her tiptoes and sees it. Lying on the ground near where the car used to be, half buried in tall grass, is a battery box. In it is the same new battery she'd been holding earlier. Art swears he installed that battery into the white car that morning. But now, the car is gone, and the battery is back on the ground like it was never used. He grabs it, climbs back over, and they head home without saying much. Later, after asking around even more, they learn the full story. There used to be a family in that house. A mom, dad, and a young daughter. One morning, on the way to take their daughter to school, they were in a car accident. All three of them died. Not long after, neighbors started reporting strange things. Lights turning on by themselves. TV sounds at odd hours. The faint noise of people talking or cooking. Like the family was still there, living out their usual routine. One by one, the people living nearby got scared and moved away. Houses went up for sale. Eventually, that whole stretch of the neighborhood was abandoned. Somewhere in that timeline, whether before the accident or after, the father had brought a car to Noon and Art's shop to change a battery. And now, it's like he came back for another one. So was that customer in the morning really human? Was that little girl really the child that never got to be born? Were they somehow stuck in a loop, still doing everyday things like sending kids to school and changing car batteries? Noon told me, "I don't think they even know they're dead. It's like they're just continuing." And then she laughed a little and said, "Well, at least we know one thing. If even ghosts come back for a battery change, our shop service must be really good." I don't mean it in a heavy way, more like, do you ever feel that some people don't quite leave, even when their bodies do? That maybe they're just next door, in a place we can't see yet. My name's Noi, and I run a small car battery shop with my husband, Tung, out in Pathamtani. It's a simple place, metal shutters, the smell of rubber and engine oil, and a lazy brown Thai Bang cow dog named Milo, who thinks he owns the street. This happened a few years ago, and it still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. That morning, it was around 6:30 a.m. The shop wasn't officially open yet, but the locals know that if the front lights are on, they can knock. Tun was in the back making coffee, and I was sweeping the floor, half awake. A silver SUV pulled up in front of the shop. I recognized it right away. We'd seen that car plenty of times before, regular customer. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, neatly dressed, like he was on his way to work. He greeted me politely, and then walked over to Tun. He said he needed a new battery, not for this car, but for another one parked at his house. He asked if we could bring the battery over and change it there, because he needed to drop his daughter at school soon. While they were talking, the back door of the SUV opened. Out stepped this little girl, maybe around 9 or 10 years old, wearing light blue cartoon pajamas with big yellow ducks on them. Her hair was tied into two small pigtails. She didn't say anything, just walked straight past me to where Milo was dozing by the doorway. Milo is usually picky about strangers, but with her, he wagged his tail and rolled over like they were old friends. I smiled and said, "Nong, you can come play with him inside if you want. The floor's cleaner in here." She glanced at me, smiled a little, and said, "It's okay, I like it here," without even looking up from scratching Milo's neck. A few minutes later, the man turned to us and said, "All right, follow me to the house in about 10 minutes. I'll just take my daughter to school first." The girl stood up, gave Milo one last pat, and climbed back into the SUV. The man nodded at me, got in, and they drove off like everything was perfectly normal. Tun loaded a new battery into the box and tied it to the back of our motorbike. I climbed on behind him and held the battery steady on my lap. The ride to the customer's place was short, maybe 7 minutes at most. It was an old housing estate, the kind with fading signs and a security booth that looked more decorative than functional. The front gate was wide open. There was a guard inside the booth, but he didn't even look up when we passed. Just sat there, radio playing softly. We followed the directions the man had given us and stopped in front of his house. The lights inside were on. I could hear a TV playing some morning show. There were sounds from the kitchen, plates clinking, someone moving around, the faint smell of garlic being fried for breakfast. It felt like any other Thai family morning. The front door opened, and the same man stepped out, now without his car keys in hand. He greeted us again and led Tun toward a white sedan parked in the driveway. While Tun started swapping out the old battery, I stood closer to the doorway, chatting politely like we usually do with customers. I said, "Your daughter is so cute, by the way. She really likes dogs, huh?" He frowned a little. "My daughter?" "Yes," I said, a bit confused. "The girl in duck print pajamas who played with my dog at the shop just now." He stared at me for a moment, like he was trying to decide if I was joking. "I went to your shop alone," he said slowly. I laughed awkwardly. "No, really. She came out of your car. Light blue pajamas, yellow ducks, pigtails. Fair skin. She looked about 10. He went very still. "My daughter is 7, he said. "She has darker skin. She's in athletics. She's always out in the sun. And she wore her school uniform this morning. She came out, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. And he asked me to repeat what I'd seen. So I did. The car, the pajamas, the way she played with Milo. As I described the girl, fair skin, about 10, duck pajamas, I saw the wife's eyes start to fill with tears. Then she started crying. Not loud, just this deep, quiet kind of crying that makes your chest hurt when you hear it. She told me that about 10 years ago, she'd had a miscarriage. They had been expecting a daughter. In Thai belief, when someone dies before their destined time, their spirit doesn't move on right away. It stays in our world, growing older as the years pass, until it reaches the age it was meant to live. Only then can it finally leave. So to her, what I described sounded exactly like the daughter she never got to meet. Tun, of course, is the practical type. While all this was happening, he was still focused on the battery. I could tell from his face he didn't really believe any of it. The husband must have noticed, because he said, "Wait here. I'll call my daughter down so you can see for yourself." A moment later, a girl came down the stairs. She was wearing a school uniform, skin tanned from playing sports, hair in a messy ponytail. She smiled politely at us, but she looked nothing like the girl in the pajamas. Tun shot me a look like, "See? You must have been mistaken." I didn't argue. I wasn't sure what to think myself. After Tun finished changing the battery, the husband told us to wait while he went inside to get the money. So we waited by the bike. No big deal. Happens all the time. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. You know when a normal wait starts to feel wrong? Like time is stretching a bit too much? Tun and I looked at each other. He shrugged, but I could see he was getting uncomfortable too. The house was still, but the TV was no longer audible. I couldn't hear the kitchen sounds anymore. It was just quiet. Then, from inside the house, I heard the soft thump, thump, thump of small footsteps on wooden stairs. A pair of small feet appeared at the top of the staircase, and then she stepped into view. The same girl. Same light blue pajamas with yellow ducks. Same pigtails. Same calm face. She walked down the stairs like she'd done it every morning of her life. She slid open the front door and looked straight at us. "Oh, you haven't finished changing the battery yet?" she called out, sounding surprised. My heart dropped into my stomach. "The battery's done already," I managed to say. "We're just waiting for your dad to bring the money." She tilted her head, as if thinking, then said, "I'll tell him," and turned around, walking back into the house. The door closed behind her. I just stood there, frozen. Tun inhaled sharply and said, very quietly, but firmly, "Noi, let's go." I blinked at him. "What about the money?" "We'll figure it out later," he said. Then more urgently, "Now, Noi." There was something in his voice that made me obey without another word. I climbed onto the bike, and he started the engine. As we rolled away, curiosity clawed at me. I wanted just one more look. Just to see the house, the windows. Anything to prove that what I'd seen was real. I turned my head. "Noi, don't look back," Tun snapped. But of course I did. And what I saw still makes my hands shake when I talk about it. The lively street we'd driven into less than an hour ago. Warm lights, faint TV sounds, the smell of cooking was gone. Every house on that stretch looked abandoned. Windows dark, paint peeling, balconies choked with vines, dry brown leaves piled up along the sides of the road. You know how dust looks when it's been collecting for years? Like a dull gray film over everything? It was like that. The house we had just been standing in front of looked empty. Like no one had lived there in a very long time. I whipped my head back around and grabbed onto Tun more tightly. Neither of us said a word the whole ride back. She went quiet for a second, then said, "Noi, that street's been empty for a while now. No one lives there. Didn't you know?" I didn't sleep well that night. Now, you'd think the story ends there, right? But my husband, practical, stubborn Tone, was not about to give away a brand new battery for free. Ghosts or no ghosts. Around 11 a.m., when the sun was higher and the world felt normal again, he said, "Let's go get the battery. I want to see that place one more time. Properly." Honestly, I didn't want to go. But I also didn't want him to go alone. So we rode back. This time, When we reached the entrance of the housing estate, the front gate was closed. There was a big, newly painted sign hanging there. "Do not enter." I swear to you, that sign was not there earlier that morning. The guard from before was nowhere to be seen. Tone stared at the gate for a moment, then looked at me. I could tell what he was thinking. I sighed and said, "Just be quick." He pushed the gate open enough for the bike to slip through, and we rode back to the same street. In the late morning sun, there was no way to pretend anymore. The whole place was clearly abandoned. Empty houses, overgrown yards, rusted gates. No sounds, no movement. Just the buzz of insects. When we got to the house, the gate was locked with a heavy chain. The yard inside was wild with weeds and tall grass. The windows were dusty and dark. No lights, no TV, no smell of breakfast. Just silence. Tone climbed over the gate while I stayed outside, gripping the bars. He disappeared around the side of the house for a moment. Then I heard him call my name. I stood on my toes, peeking over the gate. There, in the middle of the overgrown grass near the driveway, was our battery box, half buried in green. The flaps were still open. The new battery was back inside, like someone had carefully placed it there. The white sedan we'd worked on earlier, completely gone. Not even tire marks. "But you installed it already," I said, my voice shaking. "I did," Tone replied. "I tightened it myself." He didn't waste another second. He grabbed the battery, hoisted it up, climbed back over the gate, and we left that place without looking back. Later, after asking around more carefully, we heard the rest of the story. There had been a family living in that house years ago. A father, mother, and a little girl. One morning, while driving their daughter to school, they got into a serious accident. None of them survived. Not long after the funeral, neighbors started noticing strange things. Lights turning on in the house at night. The TV flickering. The sound of people talking. Of cutlery clinking. Of a child laughing. Curtains moving when no one lived there anymore. Some neighbors tried to ignore it. Others couldn't. One by one, people on that stretch of road put their houses up for sale. Eventually, the whole area became known as a place people avoided. I had heard rumors, but I never connected them to that particular house. Until that day. So, was the man who came to our shop that morning really alive? Was the girl in the duck pajamas just my imagination? I don't have a clear answer for you. But I remember how Milo's tail wagged when she played with him. I remember the weight of the battery on my legs as we rode into that estate. I remember the smell of garlic from their kitchen, and the way the wife cried when I described the girl I saw. And I remember that when I looked back at that street, it was nothing but dust, dead leaves, and empty houses. I'll tell you this, though. Ever since that day, when I open the shop in the early morning and I hear little footsteps, or feel like someone small is standing just out of sight by the doorway, I always look down first. Just in case there's a girl in blue duck pajamas, waiting to play with Milo again. You know, every time I tell this story, I still get goosebumps. I heard it from a senior of mine back in college. Let's call her Mai. She used to work as a babysitter in Bangkok during the Asian financial crisis, around 1998. Her family's small garment shop had gone under almost overnight, so she was desperate for any job she could find. That's how she ended up working for this well-off Malaysian family, living in a quiet seaside neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Just 3 of them in the house: the mom, the dad, and their little girl, the 3-year-old named Aaliyah. Aaliyah, from the first day, was this tiny, clingy kid, super attached to her mom, always jumpy at small sounds, scared of strangers. But the house itself, honestly, Mai said it felt normal, calm even. 2 floors, lots of windows, a view of the water. She'd go in the morning, play with Aaliyah, feed her, clean up a bit, then clock out around 5 in the afternoon. Routine, quiet, nothing strange. For about a month. One day, the mom told Mai, "I'll be home late today. Can you stay a bit longer?" Extra pay, of course. And since Mai needed the money, she said yes right away. That evening, as the sun was going down, Aaliyah started getting really cranky. Whiny, clingy, just not herself. Mai assumes she was hungry or sleepy, so she went to the kitchen to warm some milk. She's there stirring the pot, half tired, half zoning out, when suddenly, Aaliyah screams. Like, full-on terrified scream. Mai drops everything and runs back to the living room. And Aaliyah is gone. Now, imagine that. You're responsible for someone else's child, and she disappears in the span of a minute. Mai said her heart just dropped, but she tried to stay logical. Aaliyah's only 3. She can't have gone far. So Mai starts searching the ground floor, calling her name, checking under tables, in the bathroom, everywhere. And then she hears it. Soft giggling from upstairs. She said it was that kind of giggle that kids do when they're playing with someone they really like. Except there was no one else in the house. Mai runs up the stairs, follows the sound, and it leads her to the master bedroom. The door is slightly open. She pushes it gently, and there, on the bed, is Aaliyah, sitting cross-legged, laughing, and poking at a doll. Mai feels this wave of relief. She's just glad the kid is okay. But as she walks closer, something about the doll hits her as wrong. It's about the size of a Barbie, but it doesn't look like any doll you'd see in a toy store. The skin looks too real. The hair is long and dark, like actual human hair. And then she notices the doll has fingernails and toenails. Not painted on plastic ones, actual little nails protruding out of its tiny fingers and toes. And when the light hits its face, she sees sharp, tiny fangs in its mouth. Mai told me, the moment I saw that thing, my stomach turned. It didn't feel like a toy. It felt like something that was watching. But at that moment, the doll was the least of her worries. She just wanted Aaliyah away from it. So she reaches out to pick Aaliyah up, and the kid suddenly screams. Blood starts dripping from one of Aaliyah's fingers. She's wailing now, holding her hand, and Mai is panicking, trying to see where the cut is, trying to calm her down. To make things worse, the house phone rings. It's the mom. She hears Aaliyah crying in the background and immediately asks, "What happened? What's wrong?" Mai, still in shock, can only say, "She's bleeding. Her finger is bleeding." The parents rush home soon after. Mai explains everything that happened and hands the doll over to the mom, thinking maybe it belongs to them. She goes pale, then furious. She turns to her husband and starts yelling at him. He snaps back, and suddenly they're both shouting at each other in a mix of Malay and Indonesian that Mai can't fully follow. She can tell one thing, though. Whatever that doll is, the mom did not want it near her daughter. Later, Mai would realize that night was when the hauntings really began. After that, the atmosphere in the house changed. Mai said she never felt alone, even when it was just her and Aaliyah. She'd be playing with the kid on the floor and feel this pressure, like someone was standing behind her, watching. Sometimes, out of the corner of her eye, she'd see a tall, shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. But when she turned to look directly, nothing was there. In the kitchen, while washing dishes, she'd hear faint whispers, soft, rhythmic, like someone reciting prayers in a language she didn't understand. There were no phones on, no radio, no TV. Just her and a 3-year-old. But the voices kept coming and going. This went on for months. By the 5th or 6th month, Mai had had enough. She needed the money, but she was worn down, exhausted from being scared all the time. She finally opened up to a close friend about it and told her, "I'm going to quit. I can't do this anymore." Her friend, trying to be supportive, said, "Okay, let me come over once. I'll keep you company, then you decide." A few days later, on a day when both parents were supposed to be out, Mai's friend came by. Mai opened the gate and greeted her, all relieved to finally have someone there with her. The first thing her friend says is, "Oh, I thought you said no one was home." Mai frowns. "Yeah, they're not. Just me and Aaliyah." Her friend looks up at the house, confused, and asks, "Then, who's that woman on the 2nd floor?" "The one with long hair, standing near the window." Mai turns around immediately. The window is empty. She tells her friend to stop joking. It's not funny. Then she pulls her inside the house. As soon as her friend steps in, she covers her nose and winces. "What's that smell? It's like something dead." Mai smells nothing. To her, the house is just the same as always. No weird odor, nothing. She laughs it off nervously and says, "Seriously, I don't smell anything. Come sit in the living room. I'll get you something to snack on." So Mai goes to the kitchen for a few minutes, and then she hears a scream. Not from Aaliyah, from her friend. She drops what she's doing and runs to the living room, just in time to see her friend bolting straight out the front door and through the gate, like she's running for her life. Mai chases after her, shouting, "What happened? What's wrong?" Her friend, shaking and out of breath, yells into the phone when Mai calls her. "That woman I saw upstairs, she came down. She was naked, and she tried to stab me." Mai thinks she's lost it. "What are you talking about? I told you, no one is here." Her friend insists, voice cracking, "I'm not making this up. She ran at me, Mai. Hair down to her waist, eyes wide, like she wanted to kill me. After that, Mai said, it stopped being just weird or uncomfortable. It became terrifying. But still, she kept quiet. Who could she tell? Who would believe her? She tried to keep going, pretending everything was normal, until the incident that finally made her walk away. It was an ordinary afternoon. The mom was out, and Mai was doing her usual babysitting with Aaliyah. The dad, who was usually more like a ghost than any actual spirit, always working, barely talking to his daughter, was home that day. But that day, out of nowhere, he picks up Aaliyah and carries her upstairs. Mai finds it strange, but she doesn't say anything. She's in the living room tidying up when suddenly she hears Aaliyah scream again. This time, it's different. Louder. More desperate. Mai runs upstairs and finds Aaliyah standing there, both hands covered in blood. Not just one little cut on a finger, both hands, palms and fingers, bleeding. Drops of blood on the floorboards. The dad is standing a few steps away, just staring at his daughter. Not rushing to help, not comforting her, just watching. Mai rushes in, grabs Aaliyah, and tries to stop the bleeding. She's shaking, trying to figure out what happened, what cut her this badly. She calls the mom immediately. When the mom gets home, she and the dad go into their room to talk, and Mai overhears bits of it. The dad says it was an accident, that Aaliyah was playing with a knife and hurt herself. The mom doesn't buy it. You can hear it in her voice, the disbelief, the anger. They start arguing again, and Mai realizes something. Whatever is wrong in this house, it's not just the haunted part. It's the people. That night, she tells the mom she wants to quit. The mom breaks down crying. She begs Mai to listen to her first, says she needs to tell someone what's really going on, because she can't talk to anyone else. The family has a reputation. Her husband is a respected businessman, and no one would understand. So, she confides in Mai. She tells her that her husband is deeply involved in black magic and witchcraft. Not just a bit superstitious, full-on rituals, amulets, offerings. And that strange doll Mai saw? It's called a jenglot. The mom explains that people believe a jenglot has a spirit or ghost bound to it. It's treated like a charm or an amulet, supposedly bringing power, protection, or success. But it doesn't come for free. To take care of a jenglot, you have to feed it blood. And the bigger your wish, the bigger the sacrifice. Her husband, she says, believes that the purer the blood, the more powerful the result. Children's blood, especially from his own child, he sees as the ultimate offering for his business deals and ambitions. Mai feels sick hearing this. Suddenly, so many things click into place. Aaliyah's constant fear. The way she only truly relaxed around her mom. The random injuries, always brushed off as accidents. Her friends seeing the woman with long hair, reeking of decay, charging at her. The whispers. The shadows. The mom says she found out about the jenglot and the rituals long ago, but she's trapped by culture, by family pressure, by fear of what her husband might do if she exposed him. She stays for her daughter, hoping she can protect her at least a little. Mai listens, heart pounding, hands cold, and that's when she makes her decision. She hugs the mom, apologizes, and tells her she really, truly cannot stay any longer. The spirits, the blood, the lies. It's too much. She says goodbye to Aaliyah, who clings to her one last time, confused but strangely quiet. Mai walks out of that house and never goes back. When she finished telling me this story, she went silent for a while. Then she said, "I still think about that little girl. I wonder if she's okay. I wonder if she ever got away from all that." And honestly, same. Because at the end of the day, all the ghosts and creepy dolls and black magic aside, the scariest part of this story isn't the Jenglot. It's a father who could hurt his own child and call it sacrifice. She was only 3. Some people should never be allowed to have that kind of power over a helpless kid. You know, it's funny. When people ask me about the worst place I ever pulled a shift, they expect a war story. Explosions, firefights, something like that. But the place that really stuck to me, got inside my head, was quiet. We called it Post 9. It was way up north, farther than any map made it feel. Just a little listening station, buried in snow and bad decisions. Nothing around us but wind, drifts, and this kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt heavy, like it pressed against your skin. Nights there didn't really end. The sky just went from black to a slightly different black. The fluorescent lights in the barracks buzzed non-stop, one long, nervous note, and the walls always felt damp and cold, like they were sweating from the inside. My bunk was against the far wall, right under a cracked strip of paint. I remember that detail for some reason, that crack. I used to stare at it when I couldn't sleep. Anyway, one night, the wall above my head starts making this sound. At first I think, pipes. Old bass, shoddy repairs. Everything rattles when the wind decides to howl. Maybe mice, maybe the woods settling in the cold. You can explain away anything at the start, you know? But this wasn't just creaking or tapping. It was shaping itself into something. Into my name. I'm lying there, eyes closed, almost asleep, and I hear it, right over my head. This breathy little murmur, pulling my name out of the plaster. I froze. I remember feeling my heartbeat in my teeth. I waited, holding my breath so I didn't make a sound. But it didn't come again. Just the buzz of the light and the wind outside. Next night, though, it comes back. Clearer. Closer. This time it doesn't just say my name. After it whispers that, it says, "Open it." I sit up so fast I almost fall out of the bunk. I can see my breath in the air, like steam from a kettle. Everything is quiet, but that kind of quiet that feels like someone's listening. So I whisper back, because of course I do. I say, "Who's there?" Nothing. Just the light flickering a little, doing that nervous blink it used to do when the generator was thinking about quitting. And then I hear, "I'm inside." So soft I almost think I imagined it. But I didn't. I knew I didn't. It had weight. You ever notice that? Some sounds have weight. They push the air a little different, like you can feel them on your ear, not just hear them. I told myself it was isolation. Too many nights without real sleep. You start to hear patterns in the static, voices in the fans. That's normal, right? But I pressed my palm flat against the wall above my head, and I swear to you, there was something behind it. Not moving much, just breathing. By the third night, I'd talked myself into and out of believing it maybe 100 times. I told myself I wouldn't do anything stupid. I'd ignore it, put in earplugs, pray the generator would die so the whole place would go dark and force everyone to move. But that whisper kept coming. Little things. My name. Open it. Sometimes just this slow, drawn-out breathing, like someone on the other side was trying not to cough. So that night, I snapped. I waited until my bunkmate, Malik, solid guy, never asked too many questions, was out on watch. Base was dead quiet, just me, the humming light, and the sound in the wall. I grabbed my multi-tool, little thing with a short blade, and I started cutting into the paneling above my bed. I made this narrow opening and reached my hand in. It was colder inside the wall than it was in the room. Still air, dry, completely empty. No pipes, no nest, no hidden crawl space, just hollow space between boards. I remember feeling this mix of relief and embarrassment, I guess. Like I'd just proved to myself how badly I'd been spooked. And then, from behind me, right by the door, a voice said, "Too late. I'm not inside anymore." I went cold all over, not just scared, emptied out. I turned around so fast I banged my shoulder on the bunk. No one was there. The barracks were empty. Every bed in perfect military order, lockers shut. The light flickered once, then again, then steadied like nothing had happened. I dropped the multi-tool. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't even pick it back up. And then, right beside my ear, as close as if someone was leaning over my shoulder, I heard a whisper. Same words as before, same tone. But this time, it was my voice. Go back to sleep. I don't remember lying down. I don't remember closing my eyes. It's like that part got cut out of the film. When I woke up, everything was normal. The wall above my bunk, perfect, not a scratch, no cut, no crack bigger than the one I'd stared at 1,000 nights before. My multi-tool was gone, but my hands were raw. Little cuts across my palms and fingers like I'd been digging through something sharp. Dried blood under my nails. Malik came in from his shift, walked past my bunk and just stopped. Looked at me. His face was pale in that washed-out light, and his eyes had this far-away, hollow look, like he'd seen something he was still trying to pretend he hadn't. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, just from the way he looked at me, I knew. He'd heard it too. Maybe not my voice, maybe not from my wall, but something had spoken to him as well. After that, the whisper stopped calling my name. It didn't tell me to open anything. It didn't breathe in the wall above my head. In some ways, that was worse. Because instead of hearing it, I started feeling it. You know when you're falling asleep and your body jerks because your brain thinks you tripped? It was like that, but inside. Every time I breathed in, there was this drag. Like something was adjusting itself under my ribs, making room. When I closed my eyes, I could feel a stare. Not from the corner of the room or from the doorway, but from right behind my own face. like something had climbed out of that wall and just stepped into me. And then, a few weeks later, a new kid got assigned to our barracks. Fresh uniform, boots still too stiff. That hopeful look in his eyes you only see on the first week. He took the bunk 2 down from mine. Didn't complain about the cold. Said the silence was peaceful. Yeah. First or second night, I'm lying there, pretending to be asleep, and I hear him whispering to the wall by his bed. Just a soft, uncertain, almost embarrassed whisper. "Hey, you there?" And from the way the air shifted, from the way he stopped breathing for a second, I knew it had answered. I never heard what it said to him. Didn't need to. See, I think that's how it works, how it spreads. One by one. It talks to you long enough that you open something. Wall, door, yourself. Doesn't really matter. It gets in. And once it's in, it uses you to reach the next guy. And the next. And the next. Post 9 stopped feeling like a place to me after that. It felt like a mouth. A big, quiet mouth buried in the snow, just waiting for the next man to lie down and put his head near the wall. Every person who sleeps there for long enough, we all end up speaking for it, one way or another. If you hear a voice in the wall calling you, don't listen. If it asks you to answer, don't. And whatever you do, don't cut into the wall. So, hey, I've never really told this whole story out loud like this before. I shared bits of it with my Aunt Rosa and my cousin Mia a long time ago. But lately it's been on my mind, and I kind of feel like maybe it's time to actually talk about it. This happened when I was about 14 years old. I was walking home from my friend Lena's house. She lived maybe 1.5 miles away from me, on the outskirts of our little town. Not quite full countryside, but still pretty quiet. I'd walked that route a bunch of times, even at night. Nothing weird ever happened. It was the kind of area where you know every bump in the road, every fence post, every porch light. That night it was late, around 12:30 a.m. or so. I had one earbud in, music playing low, just kind of zoned out and walking like I usually did. And then, out of nowhere, this awful feeling hit me. It was like my body realized something was wrong before my brain did. My chest tightened, my skin went cold, and I suddenly felt like I wasn't alone anymore. Not in a, maybe someone's around way, but in a, something is watching you way. My feet actually stopped moving on their own. I pulled my earbud out and just stood there on the side of the road, listening. It was so quiet. No cars, no dogs barking, just my own breathing. I looked out to the side of the road, over this stretch of empty field that I'd passed 100 times. And that's when I saw it. There was this shape, a shadow figure standing out in the field. Not near a tree, not by a fence, just there, by itself. When I noticed it, it was already facing my direction, like it had been watching me the entire time. When its head turned a little, like it was really locking eyes with me, my whole body went numb. It was tall and dark and wrong. That's the only way I can explain it. Almost like those internet stories about Slender Man, but not exactly. It didn't have a clear face. It was more like a human-shaped hole cut out of the world. Like all the light around it just disappeared. I don't know how long I stared at it, but at some point it tilted its head, just a tiny bit, and then it started running straight at me. I have never felt fear like that in my life. Every instinct in me just screamed, "Run." So I did. I turned and ran as fast as I could, full sprint down that road. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, louder than my own footsteps. I didn't dare look back, not even once. I was convinced that if I looked, it would be right behind me. By the time I reached my house, I was completely out of breath. Shaking so badly, my hands could barely get the key in the door. I slammed it behind me, locked everything, and just stood there in the hallway, trying not to cry. That night, I couldn't sleep. At all. I turned on my bedroom light, then my lamp, then even the little fairy lights I had on my wall. Like layers of safety that didn't really do anything. I sat on my bed with my back against the wall, knees up, just waiting for the sun to come up. At some point, though, my body must have given in, because I did fall asleep. And that's when the dream started. In the dream, everything felt normal at first. I was hanging out in the park with some friends from school, just talking and messing around. Then these two kids, a boy and a girl, maybe 8 or 9, walked up to us. They looked a little shy, and the boy said, "Can you help us? Our grandma fell, and we can't lift her." We went inside, and everything felt heavy. The air, the silence, all of it. The kids walked me into a living room where this figure was sitting in a chair facing away from us. I assumed that was their grandma. I said, "Hi, are you okay?" and took a step forward. The two kids moved to either side of me. When I glanced at them, they were smiling in this way that didn't match their eyes at all. Then their grandma started to move. She stood up slowly, her back still to me, and as she turned around, she wasn't a grandma at all. She was that same shadow figure from the field. Same height, same emptiness, same feeling like the world around her was being swallowed. I remember this horrible wave of recognition hitting me. Oh my God, it followed me. I turned and ran. The house suddenly felt like a maze, hallways stretching too long, doors that didn't lead anywhere. I was sprinting, heart racing, and somewhere in the middle of that panic I thought, wait, this is a dream. I just have to wake up. And I did. I snapped awake in my bed. Except, I couldn't move. I was on my back, eyes wide open, staring at my ceiling, and my whole body was frozen. I tried to lift my arm. Nothing. I tried to turn my head. Nothing. Then I realized I couldn't breathe properly either. It felt like something heavy was sitting on my chest, pressing down, squeezing the air out of me. Like hands around my throat that I couldn't see. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. It was pure terror. My lungs were burning, my mind was panicking, and I kept thinking, this is it. This is how I die. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I could move again, but the second I caught my breath, I was back in the dream, still running through that house. This happened twice. Wake up, can't move, can't breathe, something choking me. Then snap back into the dream. By the third time, when I finally woke up for real, I sat straight up in bed, gasping, sobbing, clutching my chest. My throat hurt like I'd been crying or screaming for hours. With my asthma on top of it, it felt so real, I honestly wasn't sure if I had actually been choking. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and texted my cousin Mia, even though it was the middle of the night. I just poured everything out in these long, panicky messages. The shadow in the field, the dream, the choking, all of it. She stayed up with me, messaging back and trying to calm me down. She even tried looking things up online, sleep paralysis, shadow people, whatever she could find. Back then, there wasn't as much info around, and nothing she found made me feel much better. But it helped just knowing someone was there with me. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But a few days later, little things started happening around the house. One night, I had a couple of friends over. We were watching a horror movie in my room, which is kind of ironic now. The lights were off, just the TV lighting up the room. We were all squished onto my bed under a blanket. Out of nowhere, my curtains started moving. Not like a little flutter either. They began swinging, like someone had grabbed them and yanked them side to side. I felt that same cold fear in my chest, the feeling of being watched. My friends noticed it too. One of them laughed nervously and said, "You probably left the window open." So I got up to check, hoping that was it, because that would have been simple, right? But the window was closed. Completely. Locked. I remember turning back to them and seeing all their faces change when they realized it wasn't just a draft. The joking stopped. The room got really quiet, except for the movie. Then, as we were all just staring at each other, something else happened. Suddenly, one of the letters, the O from home, dropped to the floor. Just that one. No others moved. We all jumped. A few seconds later, another letter fell. The M from the same word. It was like something was picking them off on purpose. My friends completely lost it at that point. They grabbed their stuff and were like, "Yeah, no, we're going home, right now." So they left, and I was just alone with whatever this was. After that, things get fuzzy. I honestly don't remember a lot from that time in my life. It's like my brain kind of blurred that whole period out. I know I went through a really rough patch, mentally and physically. I was exhausted all the time, anxious, dealing with a lot of heavy stuff I didn't fully understand back then. Sometimes I wonder if that thing, whatever it was, fed off of that. Off the fear, the stress, the sadness. It's a strange thought, but it's hard not to connect the two when I look back. I'd love to say it's definitely gone now, that I did something and it disappeared and everything's fine. But the truth is, I don't know. Most days, my life is normal. I sleep, I work, I laugh. I go about my day like everyone else. But every once in a while, especially when I'm alone at night, or I walk past an empty field, I'll get this tiny prickle on the back of my neck. That familiar feeling of being watched. Not always, just sometimes. And I still have never walked down that same road at night again. So yeah, that's my story. I don't know exactly what I saw, or what followed me into my dreams, or what knocked those letters off my wall. Maybe it was all in my head. A mix of fear and sleep paralysis and a rough time in my life. Maybe it was something else. All I know is, it felt real. And a part of me still feels like, somewhere just out of sight, it's still there. So, this happened back in August of 2023, just outside a small town in rural Pennsylvania. My mom has these friends, a couple named Mark and Elisa, and they asked if I could house sit for them while they took a trip up to Vermont. I was 24 then, and honestly, a quiet week in a big old house sounded kind of perfect. Free place to stay, some alone time, 2 cats to hang out with. Easy, yes. Their place was one of those older homes that somehow feels bigger on the inside than it looks from the street. You know the kind I mean. Narrow hallways, creaky wooden stairs, and more tiny doors and weird little closets than any house really needs. It had this faint smell of old books and laundry detergent, which was actually kind of comforting at first. The first few days were totally normal. I fed the cats, watered the plants, went to work during the day, and at night, I'd curl up on the couch and just binge Netflix or fall down YouTube rabbit holes. The cats, Milo and Pepper, followed me around like little shadows, then disappeared to sleep in the master bedroom once they got bored of me. On the 4th night, I was up late in the living room, on my laptop. It was quiet, just that low hum old houses have. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Upstairs. Not just random creaking, like actual footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Crossing from one side of the upstairs hallway to the other. My first thought was, okay, one of the cats definitely got shut in a room. The house isn't huge, so that seemed logical. I paused my show, went upstairs, and pushed open the master bedroom door. Both cats were there, curled up at the foot of the bed, dead asleep. I stood there for a second, trying to listen for anything else, but it was just silence. I told myself, old house, wood settles, it's fine. But the thing is, it really hadn't sounded like that random, uneven creaking. It genuinely sounded like someone walking. The next night was worse. I'd gone to bed around midnight, and sometime later, I checked the time afterward and it was around 3:20 a.m. I woke up to the sound of something dragging across the floor above me. It was that unmistakable sound of a chair being scraped across hardwood. Slow. Then a pause. Then another scrape. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was anything but what it sounded like. After a minute, I grabbed my phone and texted Mark and Elisa. Hey, random question. Does anyone else have a key to the house? Or do you have a neighbor who comes by sometimes? They replied pretty quickly for being on vacation. Nope, just you. Why? Everything okay? I told them I thought I heard something upstairs, but probably was just being paranoid. They sent back something like, "Old house, lots of noises. Don't worry." Which helped a little, but not that much. Then came the night before they were supposed to come home. I was in bed, scrolling on my phone with the light off, just the screen glowing in the dark. The TV downstairs was on really low. I do that sometimes so the house doesn't feel so quiet. That's when I heard whispering. Not the TV. Not the cats. Not a podcast accidentally playing. Whispering. It was coming from the hallway, just outside my door. At first, I froze because my brain was trying to file it under TV noise. But the TV was below me, and way too quiet for that. This was close. It sounded like two people standing just outside my room, talking softly. There were two voices. One sounded male, a little deeper and rougher. The other sounded female, softer, higher. They weren't arguing or anything. It was more like the low murmur of people trying not to wake someone up. I couldn't make out any actual words, just that soft, breathy tone of intimate whispering. Finally, I thought, okay, I have to at least look. So I used my phone as a flashlight, slid out of bed, and went to the door. The second my hand touched the doorknob, the whispering cut off. Just gone. I opened the door into this heavy, unnatural silence. The hallway was dark and empty. I checked every room upstairs. The guest room, the office, the bathroom. I even opened those weird little closet doors that look like secret passages in an old movie. Nothing. No windows open. No cool breeze. No sign that anything had been moved. The cats were asleep again, curled up together in the master bedroom like they hadn't heard a thing. The next day, I was honestly counting the hours until Mark and Elisa got home. When they finally came in, I helped them bring in their bags, did the usual small talk about their trip, and then, kind of jokingly, I said, "So, does your house, make a lot of noise at night?" I tried to keep it light, like I was just teasing them. Elisa's smile dropped immediately. She went completely pale and glanced over at Mark. He just sighed, like he already knew where this was going. She asked, "What did you hear?" I told them, still half laughing to keep myself from sounding dramatic. The footsteps, the sound of the chair dragging, and then the whispering in the hallway. Two voices, a man and a woman. I even said, "I know it sounds ridiculous, but it honestly felt like somebody was standing right outside my door." Elisa's eyes got shiny, and she said, very quietly, "You heard them too?" That's when my stomach dropped. They told me that every single house sitter they'd had over the years had mentioned something. Hearing people talking upstairs, or someone pacing in the hallway at night. One person even left early because they were so freaked out. They'd had the place inspected for everything. Bad wiring, strange drafts, animals in the walls. Nothing. No structural issues, no raccoons, no loose pipes making weird sounds. Mark said he'd once tried to stay up all night in the hallway with the lights off, just sitting there, waiting to hear the voices. He heard footsteps a couple of times, but never saw anything. No shadows, no figures. Just that feeling of not being alone. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really believe in ghosts before this. I still don't know exactly what I believe now. I've stayed in plenty of old houses, family cabins, older apartments, creaky rentals, and none of them ever felt like that house. There was this awareness to the sounds, if that makes sense. Like they weren't just random noises, they felt intentional. What sticks with me the most isn't even the footsteps or the dragging chair. It's those whispers. The way they sounded like they were right there, inches from the other side of my door, trying not to wake me. I couldn't tell you a single word they said. It was more the tone, the presence of it, like someone leaning in too close in the dark. So yeah, that's my house-sitting story. If you've ever experienced anything similar, especially in an older house, I'd honestly love to hear about it. Part of me really wants a logical explanation, like some super specific way sound travels in old homes that makes it seem like voices and footsteps. But another part of me is starting to accept that maybe there are some things we just don't have neat explanations for. Either way, I still think about that hallway sometimes, and I still sleep with my door all the way closed now.